Hello guys!
Hello, hello.
Welcome to another MSI Insider live stream. I'm here, not with just someone, but with the Ryzen Cezanne.
That's me.
Welcome, welcome. So as you probably already know, we're going to talk about a lot of technical stuff today. That's always when we invite Ruud. Because today we will show you our full lineup of our new X570S AMD models, motherboards. So we've got a lot of stuff to show you. You can already see a lot in front of me. Well, not physically in front of me because Ruud is currently at the table. I can let myself disappear and I'm gone. All of course for Corona safety. But we have got some more topics than just X570S today. We will have Martijn from AMD and he will join us to talk about the latest Cezanne CPUs. And well, they're not really CPUs actually, they're APUs because they're CPUs with integrated graphics. So you don't need a discrete graphics card with those. Of course you can do it if you want to, but you don't need it. And Martijn will tell you all about the details of these new APUs. Not only about which ones will be available, what will they cost, but also from a technical perspective. And also how will they perform compared to, for example, previous generation APUs or the current generation CPUs. So a lot of interesting information there. Also, if you have any questions for Martijn later on, drop them in chat for sure. This is your chance to get the answers from AMD themselves. We will also show you our latest all-in-one liquid coolers, our P and our C series. And if you look closely right now, you can already see one of them. We will close the stream off with those. But let's start with getting Martijn in the stream. So let me quickly grab my earpiece so I can also hear him. Hello, hello Martijn, are you there?
Hey Michiel, good. Yes I am.
Hey,
how are
welcome.
You?
I'm good,
Thank
thanks.
you.
How are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
You've got a holiday, right?
I am on holiday, but you know, everything for the fans, and obviously talking about hardware is one of my major hobbies. So I'm super excited to join today. Thanks for having me.
In the middle of Martijn's holiday, he made time for you to answer all your questions. So make sure to ask him in the chat.
Yep, I did.
And that's not the only thing Martijn arranged, because you have a nice surprise for everyone, right?
Yeah. So before I start to jump into that, I want to congratulate you and the team on MSI's 35th anniversary as well.
Thank you so much.
And in light of that celebration, we thought we would arrange a few nice prizes for you for today's stream. And I think you chimed in as well, and we chimed in to get some nice products to give away today. So let me grab those. I've got them in my hands. I'll let Michiel talk to it, but this is the bundle we've arranged for today's stream. And 3 of you lucky winners can win this today. And you'll just have to follow Michiel's instructions to hopefully be able to win this.
So if you go to msi.com/2/insider, or if you follow the direct link in the Twitch or YouTube chat, that will bring you to our Gleam giveaway. Within Gleam you can perform certain actions. The more actions you perform, the bigger chance you will have to win. And if you're a returning visitor, also make sure to claim your loyalty bonus. And like Martijn already mentioned, we will have 3 lucky winners today. And they will win the bundle that you can currently see on the side of the screen. So that's the AMD Ryzen 5 5600G. That's one of the latest APUs from AMD that we will talk about today as well. And you will also win the MAG B550 Tomahawk motherboard. Of course, fully compatible with each other, so you can build a nice system based on those 2 components. So make sure to go to msi.com/2/insider or follow the direct link in the Twitch or YouTube chat. 3 winners throughout the stream, so at different moments we will draw a winner. Okay, let's get into it, because you've got a lot of stuff to talk about these new APUs as well. Because what will they actually win?
Yeah, it's a lot of excitement around these new APUs, or accelerated processor units as we call it for short. You know, this is obviously a latest generation Ryzen product with built-in Radeon graphics. And we'll talk more about the 5600G and the 5700G available today for the newest APUs and desktop processors. So stick around to learn everything about these, and obviously, as we mentioned before, the ability to potentially win those nice prizes as well at the same time. So I put together a couple of slides just to make it a lot easier to talk to and to understand what we did with these new Ryzen 5000G desktop processors with built-in Radeon graphics. Back in November 2020, as you may remember, AMD launched the world's best gaming desktop processors with the AMD Ryzen 5000 series, bringing even more performance to the desktop space. Earlier this year, we continued that with our Zen 3 dominance with the Ryzen 5000 series mobile processors, offering the highest performance you can get in a mobile processor as well. And now, today, with that Zen 3 architecture, we're bringing these best of Ryzen combined with the power of Radeon on the same chip with Ryzen 7 5700G and Ryzen 5 5600G to the DIY enthusiast market, or available as processors in the box, as we would call it, through eTill as well. So we already launched these through OEMs in April for pre-built systems, and now they're available through eTill for you to purchase and start building PCs with as well. So as I mentioned, these processors have leading integrated graphics, performance across gaming, content creation, as well as easily paired with the latest GPUs if you choose to pair it with a dedicated GPU. Because of that Zen 3 architecture, those Zen 3 cores, really powerful and leading in gaming, you'll get a lot of performance from these new Ryzen 5000G desktop series processors.
And that's quite interesting from this generation, because previously when you, for example, for the DIY market, the previous generation APUs was the 3000 series, but in terms of architecture, that was still Zen Plus, so it was on par with the 2000 series CPUs. But that's not the case anymore in this generation, right?
No, we've made sure to align it fully with our 5000 series non-GPU processors, so to speak. So the ones we launched on November 5th last year.
So the 5000 X series, basically? 5000
series X products, as you come to know and love, and you've seen in several media reviews, probably throughout the last 6 to 8 months. And, you know, with that, we level the playing field in terms of not only making sure that in this generation 5000 series products you get the latest and greatest Zen architecture, so Zen 3, but also the best performing integrated graphics on the market with Radeon built-in graphics as well. So for all users, I already mentioned a little bit, AMD Ryzen 7 5700G. If you go to the next slide, you can see the two parts we're launching. That's an 8-core 16-thread part this generation. So previous generation was a 4-core 8-thread part. So now you get up to 8 cores and 16 threads, all built in a 65-watt TDP package with built-in Radeon graphics at the same time. So
that's a huge step up from a quad-core to an octa-core.
Yeah, not only in performance clock for clock, or IPC as we call it, obviously, but also in the absolute core count. You'll now get 8 cores and 16 threads to play with, and still, as I mentioned, in that 65-watt TDP. And who doesn't love those 65-watt TDP parts, right? I mean, if you're building a home theater system, a small office PC that can basically do it all.
Mini ITX for the win.
Mini ITX, yeah, we absolutely love those. I know you like them as well. But yeah, it's super exciting to be able to build with these products and have great CPU performance, or the best of the best actually to date, and the best built-in graphics at the same time, without the need of always having to build with a dedicated GPU.
Especially in these times, that's a bit of a thing, because of course there's a huge shortage in dedicated graphics cards. So then it can be a very nice option to go for one of those APUs to start off with.
Yeah, we heard the community loud and clear, basically, to bring these Zen 3 APU products as soon as possible to the DIY market and the enthusiast space, and that's exactly what we've done today. Not only offering a core thread and more cache and performance jump overall, but not only for the previously released APUs, you now get to choose up to 8 cores and 16 threads, as I mentioned. So there's not only a generation over generation uptick in architecture, in built-in graphics performance, but also more cores for your choosing, for example, for different workloads. If you're doing some gaming on the side, it's not all about gaming always. I mean, I would recommend an APU to a family member who is not always into gaming, but just for a do-it-all PC, it's a perfect solution. I mean, and especially as you mentioned, with some shortage out there, or from time to time some pricing increases on graphics cards, these APUs are a terrific fit for a very fast and affordable, really good price performance system today.
I see a question in Twitch chat. Martijn, would the 5600 or 5700G be acceptable for virtual reality support?
That's a good question, actually. The CPU performance obviously is. I know that VR can be a little bit taxing on the dedicated GPU, so you can try light esports titles or light games like mini golf and so on in VR probably. But if you're going for those AAA titles, I would say, potentially look at the benchmarks, look at what's out there, and from your favorite reviewers, and see what you actually need to be able to play that at a what we call a reasonable resolution and a reasonable frame rate, right?
I think it's also a bit like with non-VR games. If you want to play like the AAA titles, they will be more demanding than the more simple VR games. And for example, what you already mentioned, in terms of CPU performance, this shouldn't be an issue at all. So later on, if you upgrade this with a discrete graphics card, you can easily run VR on this.
And that's exactly the beauty of these Ryzen 5000G with built-in Radeon graphics. I mean, if you need it, you can simply upgrade with a dedicated GPU. You know, if you want to play AAA titles, and if you're done gaming, or you want to, you know, make your brother really happy or something, and you can give him the GPU if needed, and you can still continue using a really, really powerful system with really powerful built-in graphics as well at the same time. So there is a beauty in being able to build now at a, let's say, quite affordable price points. And with the beauty of that is that you can update later, exactly to your point, Michiel. Yeah.
In this slide, we can already see a couple of specs, but if I move to the next slide, we see more detailed specs, and there I see a very interesting detail, what is specifically for people who want to upgrade to a dedicated graphics card, a big step up compared to the 3000 series, and that's the PCI Express support on this.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you now get full 16 lanes of PCIe Gen 3, so that means any dedicated GPU can really get up to, you know, squeeze up most, like 99% of the performance out of that GPU, right? So you now get the full 16 lanes at your disposal, plus 4 more lanes for storage, plus 4 more lanes for other storage devices or other USB solutions as well. So there is a bit more lanes to have, and this makes it a lot more desirable to potentially upgrade later with more add-in cards, for example, as well.
Yeah, and some people might be wondering, because it is PCI Express 3.0 and not like, for example, the CPU's 4.0, but 16 lanes of 3.0 will still not really bottleneck today's even high-end graphics cards.
No, on the GPU side, I mean, if you're gaming, I think you have done some research recently as well in one of your streams, or I've seen some media do research as well. Yeah, you know, it really depends on the workload you're looking at as to why you need PCIe Gen 4, and that's why we obviously have the Ryzen 5000 series without built-in graphics available, with obviously PCI Express Gen 4. Should you choose to do a lot of workloads that desire more graphics bandwidth, but for anything else out there, it's mostly PCI 3.0. That's a really super fast, and we wanted to make this a flexible solution, affordable for system builders as well. And obviously, we want to make this readily available for everybody to grab without, you know, overextending or making things overcomplicated for a CPU with built-in graphics. So, you know, time to market is really important. And the good thing is these are widely available today, as you've seen since August 5th. So that was our main goal, to get these ready as soon as possible and make sure that everybody can enjoy a really potent built-in graphics or a graphics solution with the fastest CPU cores available. So.
And what's also interesting, that I saw that they are also reaching your MSRP. So you can buy them for the price they were announced for, and that's quite interesting, especially right now with the integrated graphics in the GPU market. That's because of the shortage. It's very hard to buy a graphics card at MSRP price, but these with the integrated graphics, you actually managed to reach that price.
Yeah, and to be honest, we really don't have any control over that. Obviously, it's the market that's deciding this, and it's supply and demand and everything that's going on in the GPU market. If you've been following that, obviously from a mining perspective and everything else that's going on, it's mainly the GPUs that seem to be you know, taxed a little bit more, but it's the CPUs that stay, you know, pretty desirable in terms of price points, really close to MSRP or SEP as we call it. And that's absolutely a good thing. So I'm super happy to see that today as well in multiple regions actually. So.
Yeah, and also what you saw is that even more entry-level graphics cards are relatively expensive nowadays compared to what they used to be. Of course, with the current trend in graphics card pricing. But with these 5000G series, you don't really need one of those entry-level graphics cards anymore.
No, this is the fastest built-in graphics available, and you can really see that if we go to the performance slides later on, what this little built-in graphics chip can do, this Radeon graphics. I mean, it's really showing and demonstrating that you can play at 720p or sometimes even 1080p at super high frame rates depending on the game you're playing. So we'll dive in that a little bit later, so we can skip through. I think I had a slide in there with the die image of the Cezanne or the 5000G series desktop processors, just to demonstrate a little bit that this is a monolithic design with 8 cores and 16 threads. A lot more cache to be had as well, as you could see in the previous slide, which helps in the gaming performance. But all in all, it means that with that monolithic design, that Radeon built-in graphics is now also within that 7nm process. So you slightly get an increase there in power efficiency and performance increase as well. But as you can see in the next slide, to answer your question on the performance, before we go into gaming, you can see across the board generational performance uplift in CPU heavy benchmarks. So not only demonstrating gaming performance, but also performance for content creation, office builds, home theater systems, and so on. Obviously, synthetic benchmarks give us a good sign of the raw CPU performance.
So this is really where the Zen 3 architecture comes in.
Where it shines, really, yeah, and you can see across the board, jumping from Zen Plus on a 3000G or a 3400G to Zen 3 on a 5000G series products with increased clock speeds. It shows a performance uplift of nearly 1.5x in single-threaded applications, or nearly 3x in multi-threaded application. That is a huge jump. And obviously in multi-threaded, that's also because of the fact that it now has 4 additional more cores on the 5700G. But you know, the real big performance jump in architectures where you can see that in the single thread performance alone. 1.5x is no small feat. And so when we look at the graphics performance, we are seeing a performance uplift of about 13% when we use the built-in Radeon graphics. So it's a lot faster from our previous generation built-in graphics. And when we couple it with a dedicated GPU, in short, which I'll talk to a little bit more later, we'll see performance increases over 30% versus the 3000G series products paired with a dedicated GPU. So I think you've put the slide up now with the gaming performance.
Yes.
And that's where you can really see, to answer your question, CPU bound titled versus GPU bound titled. It depends on the game you're playing, and if you're a big fan of esports titles, you'll be super happy to see that with Ryzen 5000G with built-in Radeon graphics, you can now get performance almost up to 200 frames per second from built-in graphics at 1080p. So that is a huge, huge performance increase over the...
I see some people in the chat already talking about different resolutions. Like with integrated graphics, of course, it's not realistic to game at, for example, Ultra HD resolutions, 4040p, maybe in esports titles it will be playable, but that's not where integrated graphics are meant for. Of course, they do support these higher resolutions, and for example, for multimedia usage, if you're building a home theater PC and you want to play movies in 4K, it's perfectly suitable for that, but this is not meant for 4K gaming.
Well, you can, because I'm a huge fan of retro gaming, for example, and I used to...
you definitely can, yeah.
Yeah, I used to change the INI files of Red Alert or whatever, right, and play that at 4K, so you can see the entire map and so on. And that's
I think those you could even play in 8K.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a lot of benefits to have in those titles as well, or in less taxing titles, such as Worms, for example, those kind of games, if you're into that. I think you can easily play that with built-in graphics at a reasonable frame rate as well, even at 4K. But yeah, where it really shines and where we want to make those comparisons, obviously, where not only you as a gamer look at, but also where media mostly compares generation over generation or compared to our competitor, you'll typically see these titles pop up, and you'll see the performance is really up there with almost 200 FPS in League of Legends, for example, or if you play Counter-Strike on dedicated graphics, or sorry, on built-in graphics, you get a close to 130 FPS. So it's really a small a small chip with a big step forward, is I'd like to call it.
For 1080p esports titles, perfectly suitable at very nice frame rates, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. And worst case, users get a small upgrade, but in best case scenario, as we mentioned, you get a huge upgrade over previous generation or any competing chip that you're currently on.
But you guys have another trick to increase the frame rate a little bit more.
Exactly. So recently launched is Fidelity FX Super Resolution, a new Radeon feature, and this is built around a spatial upscaling solution that delivers super high quality edges and distinctive pixel detail that basically allows you to unlock even more performance from your system for the games that support this. Gamers will have access to 4 different settings they can choose from, whether it's the preferences for the best performance, or if they want the best quality. If they're playing a title that's not that demanding, they can choose ultra quality or something in between to really get a nice performance uplift from this great feature that is called FSR in short. And as you can see, with the same built-in Radeon graphics, you get a performance jump of almost 2x sometimes, or even more, just from that. So when it comes to FSR, and for example in this case the 5700G, you are able to have a quality gaming session at a setting of your choosing. And ultimately, who doesn't love more FPS, right? And especially if it's from a Radeon feature that is now supported on built-in graphics, but as well as in Radeon dedicated graphics cards as well across the board.
And if you guys want to know more about FSR, a couple of weeks ago we actually did a dedicated live stream about this topic. Peter did this, so make sure to check out the MSI Insider playlist, and there you will find a full live stream talking about FSR, but also comparing different situations, seeing what kind of extra performance do you get when enabling it, etc., etc. So make sure to check it out if you're interested in more information about this new Fidelity FX Super Resolution feature that you will, for example, also find in these APUs, but also on discrete graphics cards.
Yeah, I saw that stream and it was very, very interesting indeed. So I do recommend guys go check that one out as well if you want to know more about FSR. But we always get the question as well, what happens if you pair a Ryzen 5000G APU with a dedicated graphics card? Well, obviously you are getting great gaming performance because it's based on Zen 3 CPU core. So you get a lot of CPU performance, game leading CPU performance. And at the same time, as you can see, generation over generation, we're making huge strides forward into the spaces where you see the differences between a APU and a CPU becoming smaller and smaller this generation. So obviously with our 5000 Vrm products without built-in graphics, we have a little bit more cache to play with and a little bit more TDP headroom as well, which ultimately leads to a little bit more higher frame rates.
Because 5800X is a 105 watt TDP part, and
exactly.
5700G is a 65 TDP part.
Efficiency-wise, this is really close to the 5800X, and this is only at 65 watt TDP, right? So it's a really big achievement for a APU, I would say. And there is little difference, I think, noticeable in most titles when you play on a 5800X or a 5700G. I mean, it's only where you get to those scenarios where you really need, twitch shooters and so on, where you really need that high reaction times, the lowest latency possible, where you have a nice upgrade going with a Ryzen 5000 product without the built-in graphics solution. But that's for the guys that are really into day-to-day gaming and in esports titles mostly. But across the board, you can see you can simply pair a Ryzen 5000G with built-in graphics as well. With a dedicated GPU as well. But it's not all about gaming, obviously. So these, as I mentioned in the beginning, these GPUs with CPUs or APUs that we call it, it's meant for more than just gaming. We know that the market is asking for gaming figures right now because of the graphics card situation as well. But again, you can also build a really, really strong office PC, home theater system, a multimedia device, and so on with Ryzen 5000G with built-in Radeon graphics. So all in all, considering this has, as I mentioned, built-in graphics and targeted at 65 watt TDP, the 5700G is showing great gaming performance for those who like to pair it with a dedicated GPU now or later.
I see a question in chat from Action Brother on Twitch. Would you be able to run a secondary side monitor on the integrated GPU while gaming on a dedicated GPU on a main monitor?
That is a good question. I'd say I need to check that one out.
I wouldn't really know why you would want that, because if you have a dedicated GPU, you could also have your secondary monitor attached to your dedicated GPU. It's not like that will give you a significant performance impact. But with the integrated
maybe
GPU,
you can from the technical side.
Yeah, you can
Not
do
sure
both
if you
monitor,
can run
right?
the APU and the GPU at the same time. I would expect so, but I haven't tried it, so I don't have the CPU yet.
Yeah, the question is, will there be video output, right, from the board HDMI connector or DP connector?
Yeah.
To a second screen or
I think for
it's an interesting question. We'll check that one out and we'll follow up on that for sure in one of the next streams. I mean, Ruud and Michiel obviously will follow up on that as well.
There was an additional question also about can you do like a crossfire with the APU and a dedicated graphics card?
Man, these guys are getting creative.
Actually, it was done in the past when it was called hybrid crossfire. I don't know if you remember. Yeah.
It's some time ago. I do.
Yeah, that is some time ago.
I'm not sure about that one. I really haven't dug that deep in the capabilities of those features today. I think the majority is now focusing on the strong built-in graphics. So I really have to check out what the technical guys say about that one. But so far, what I know is that these built-in graphics are the strongest we've ever built, so take advantage of that. And if you really want that more performance, just simply upgrade to a dedicated GPU.
Yeah. Flying Creamy Pie on Twitch chat also mentioned I have 2 monitors connected to my 5700 XT, and the second monitor doesn't impact the FPS on my main monitor. No, indeed. I think if you're running multi-monitor, for example, I'm running 3 monitors at home, but it doesn't significantly impact your frame rate on your main monitor. So,
no.
Yeah, if you have like multiple outputs on your dedicated GPU, which I suppose you have, then there is no real use to have that one to the iGPU.
Maybe if people want to do like 6 monitors, 4 on the graphics card and 2 on the motherboard.
Yeah, like if you have so many monitors that you don't have enough display outputs
I think it's still
anymore,
possible,
then
because
maybe indeed.
you can also run like 2 completely different graphics card on the same system in Windows nowadays. So it's kind of flexible. Even an NVIDIA and an AMD, they don't clash, or usually they don't clash. But for the graphics part and combining the power, it should be possible in DirectX 12, but hardly any title will actually use the power of both GPUs, so don't expect too much gain there.
No, guys, these questions really tempt me to go and figure out this on my own during my holiday now. So maybe I'll give this a try myself and see what we can come up with in terms of performance, and I'll let Ruud and Michiel know as well. Okay. But those are good questions for sure. I think circling back to what you actually need to build a system with a Ryzen 5000G series.
That was actually a question in chat right now. Does the motherboard need a BIOS update in order to run Ryzen 5000G series?
Great question. So if you go to the next slide, I think we've got most of the details listed out there. I mean, really building with a Ryzen 5000G series system is incredibly easy. I mean, the hardware requirements are really low in terms of motherboards. You'll need a motherboard with a 400 series or 500 series motherboard.
Potatoes also asking on Twitch chat, can you use this on B350? No, you cannot. You need at least a 400 series motherboard.
Yeah, and that has the right BIOS to boot, and I believe that BIOS has been available for motherboards in stock since February or March, or maybe even earlier.
Because of course the 5000G series, they were already available in OEM systems, so they existed already. So we already built in the BIOS support quite a while before the launch, the dedicated launch for the DIY parts was on the 5th of August, I believe. So yeah, the BIOS.
And if you're not sure. Yeah, if you're not sure, simply update your BIOS before you upgrade to a Ryzen 5000G products on the current CPU you're sitting on. I mean, that's the safest way to do it, and I would always recommend it anyway.
It will also probably give you a better experience, more optimization.
Exactly, and there's stability improvements or performance improvements to be had with the latest BIOS version. Those are listed on MSI's product pages. So simply look at your BIOS motherboard product page. Pick the latest BIOS, and you'll be in 99% of the cases you'll be fine to upgrade your CPU and have the best of the best experience for sure. And as you can see on this slide as well, I mean, for boot or post you would need a Giza 1.1.8.0, but for the best experience we recommend going with 1.2.0.3b or newer, because they're actually already newer out. As Ruud may also touch on with those motherboards you will demonstrate later. But that's the only thing you need. I mean, the DDR4 memory stays the same. Obviously, we recommend good price performance kits out there that are nowadays, and it's almost like day pricing changes. 2 times 8 gigabytes is really affordable right now for DDR4 3200 CL16. That doesn't mean it's the best of the best, but in terms of price performance, it's the absolute sweet spot right now. Obviously, running this with a 3600 kit or even higher, it's what you can experience as well. If you're wanting to squeeze the most performance out of these APUs, you'll simply go for a 3600 kit or even higher, as many of the reviewers and overclockers have already demonstrated. And I think you guys have already demonstrated as well, is that with these Ryzen 5000G series, you can simply overclock not only the CPU, but also the memory and the GPU built in as well. So there is, for the enthusiasts out there, this is a unlocked APU or unlocked CPU. So you can have a lot of performance gains if you want to be an enthusiast, if you want to indulge yourself in the world of overclocking and squeeze some more performance out of these puppies, then you simply have the tools to do so, especially on a 400 series and 500 series board. So yeah, as you can see, it's really easy to either build a new system or upgrade your current system with the Ryzen 5000G series product with built-in Radeon graphics.
Martijn, thank you so much for explaining all about these new 5000G series APUs. And I think it is about time to draw our first winner in the giveaway.
Yeah, I think you let me go first, right, on the first one. So winning a Ryzen 5 5600G processor and a MSI B550 Tomahawk motherboard, the first winner is nicknamed Shikes, who is from Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So congratulations, Shikes, you win this bundle, terrific gaming bundle, or anything else you want to do with it. With built-in graphics, obviously, so you can simply start building or upgrading your current PC. And I hope you have tremendous fun with it. And be sure to let us know how well you're doing once you finish your build. Congratulations!
Congratulations, Shikes. So that's our first winner for today. But we have 2 more of these bundles to give away, of the Ryzen 5 5600G, not 5700, 5600G, and the MAG B550 Tomahawk motherboard. So if you also want to win one of these nice bundles, make sure to go to msi.com/2/insider, or if you're watching on Twitch or YouTube, you can also follow the direct link to our Gleam giveaway through the link in the chat that will drop there every 5 minutes, I believe. So if you haven't participated yet,
nice bundle,
make sure to do so.
Yeah, nice bundle. I mean, the B550 and the 5600G seems like a perfect price performance sweet spot as well. So just some memory and you're good to go.
Yeah. Martijn, thank you so much for joining. We're going to talk about some more AMD stuff, X570S, and we hope to talk to you again with your next big launch.
Thanks for having me, and thank you all for tuning in, and have fun with the guys talking about X570S, and I'll catch you on the next round.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, guys, that was Martijn. Always very nice to have him in the stream when, of course, talking about the latest AMD products. I hope you liked what he said, what he explained. I hope you have a little bit more information now about the technical background of these new AMD Ryzen 5000G series APUs. And now we will continue with our next topic because we have a lot of stuff right here in front on the table. A lot of motherboards to show, because today we will show you the full MSI X570S motherboard lineup. And let me quickly go to our slides. Because we've got several models to show you today. We've already, I believe 2 months ago, we had a live stream where we already showed you the Torpedo and the Tomahawk models. Today we will show you the full lineup. And of course, the main big change from X570 to X570S is that the fan disappears. I know the fan is always kind of a controversial topic. Some people didn't mind having a fan on their motherboard. Other people genuinely hated it and didn't want to buy an X570 motherboard because there was a fan on there. I know many people also still have memories of those very old motherboards. I also remember them with the fans that were, in those days, they were always on, and they were a lot smaller also, and they were super loud. Some were didn't even have proper control, so they were always running at maximum RPM.
4,000 RPM.
Yeah, so I can understand where the sentiment comes from. I think on the regular X570 models, the noise was not that bad. But of course, if you can make it passive, I think it's definitely worth it to do so. So that's what we did with our X570S series. And I know a lot of people think that this is physically a different product from the regular X570 chipset. But that's not the case. X570S, in terms of features, but also in terms of the physical chip, is the same as X570 as we know it. But the big difference comes from a firmware update from AMD that makes this chip a lot more energy efficient. So it makes it a lot easier for us to have passive cooling on the motherboard without having to do something extreme to make it passively cooled. Because of course, if you would have to do a very extensive cooling layout, it will get tremendously expensive. So you wouldn't be able to do that at, for example, more affordable models like the MAG series, the MPG series. But now with this firmware update, we can do it all across the board. So all the way from the MAG series up to the MEG series in the X570S series are all passively cooled. But the passive cooling, that's not the only change that happened from our X570 series to our X570S series, because of course the X570 series were launched, I think a little over 2 years ago, right, Ruud?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I think, yeah,
But
2019,
yeah.
I believe. Yeah, a little bit before the summer, so even slightly over 2 years. So that's quite a while in the world of computers. And in the meanwhile, we have a lot of changes and a lot of technical updates as well. So with these new X570S models, we have also upgraded our complete lineup significantly. Not only in terms of the latest features, but also the core values of a motherboard, like the Vrm Design, got a huge upgrade. So let's quickly go through some of these changes that we made. For example, the Vrm Design, like I mentioned, in the previous generation. In this generation, by the way, we don't have a godlike model, so let's get that out of the way. So that's also why I'm comparing the Ace to the Ace here, because the Ace is the top model in the X570S lineup. We also had an Ace model in our X570 lineup. And in our regular X570 lineup, that was a 12 phase with 60 amp hour stages, which is already a pretty strong VRM design, I would say. But in this generation, the Ace model has a direct 16 phase VRM design with 90 amp hour stages. So that's a big step up there. But also on the lower end models, later on we will also demonstrate this to you. We made big upgrades in the VRM department. So actually on our test bench that you see right now in front of Ruud, we have the Ryzen 9 5950X. So that's the top 16 core model from the Ryzen 5000 series. And we put that on our X570S Edge model. So it's not called Gaming Edge anymore like the previous generation. To make the name a little bit shorter, it's now called Edge. And later on we will show you that it can easily run this top end Ryzen 9 part, even when overclocking it significantly, putting a lot of power through it. Still the VRM on this motherboard will not break a sweat. So later on we will do extensive demonstration with this, so you can see how strong the VRM design, even of this more mid-range motherboard, is. Later on I will also tell you all about what kind of VRM design those boards have. We also made some upgrades in the PCB department. In the previous generation we had some boards that had 4-layer PCBs, for example. Now already from the MAG series are 6-layer PCB models. And this will help in several departments. Not only will it help with, for example, the signal quality for PCI Express, but also for your memory. So you can reach higher memory speeds when you have more layers, because you will get that clearer memory signal. And when you want to overclock your DDR4 really to its limits, then those extra PCB layers will really help you. Also, most of our motherboards in the X570S generation have 2-ounce thickened copper PCB, and that will help to dissipate the heat a lot better. So not only the VRM components are upgraded, but also the PCB is upgraded in order to make sure that the cooling on the VRM is really good in this generation. Then storage, of course, M.2 is now, I would say, the standard if you're building a new gaming PC. M.2 SSDs, the NVMe PCI Express models, they got a lot cheaper over the years. So 2 years ago when X570 was launched, they were still relatively expensive, and especially the Gen 4 ones were extremely expensive at that time. Nowadays it's getting, I wouldn't say mainstream yet, like Gen 4 SSDs, but they're getting a lot more affordable. So we also put a lot more focus on adding more of those M.2 slots in our latest generation X570S motherboards.
You also have 2 price points for the Gen 4 M.2s.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah,
you have,
so
like, for example, when you look at Phison, a big manufacturer of the SSD controllers, they have their first generation and their second generation Gen 4 SSDs. And now you see when they launched the second generation Gen 4 SSDs, you saw that there was quite a big price drop for the first generation. So you get something to choose as well.
Yeah.
Also big upgrades in our networking department. Later on we'll go into more detail about that. USB as well. And also in our software department, because in the previous generation we worked with Dragon Center software. Now we have our latest MSI Center software. In the near future we will also have a dedicated live stream about this new software to show you more details about in which areas we specifically made improvements when, for example, comparing Dragon Center to MSI Center. We got a lot of feedback from the community as well, so we really took notice to improve our software as much as possible. So later on in a dedicated live stream we will tell you all the ins and outs about it and also do a little bit comparison there. Yeah, let's continue with our main segments, so to say, in our new X570S series, the main focus points, and those are temperature, performance, and experience. So to start off with temperature, that is of course very strongly related to the VRM design on the motherboard. When you have a stronger VRM design on your motherboard, the temperatures will generally be much lower than when you have a weaker VRM design. For example, our MEG models, so both the ACE and the Unify X in this case, they offer a direct 16-phase VRM design with 90 amp power stages. And this is basically the strongest kind of VRM design you can get on a motherboard nowadays. With the direct VRM design also means that the PWM controller will give a direct phase to each of the power stages without the need for additional doublers on the motherboard. So really, this is an insanely strong VRM design. Of course, we could show you the ACE today or the Unify X today, but we specifically chose for a demonstration with our Edge because it's an MPG model, it's a more mid-range model, and we want to show you that even those models already made a huge step up in terms of VRM performance, and even those MPG models and even the MAG models can easily run even the top-end Ryzen 9 processors and even overclock it, which you'll also see later on.
Yeah.
So talking about those MPG and MAG models, we also made big upgrades here. And this is this used to be on our X570 series, especially the MPG series, was one of our weaker points. We got, like in certain situations, especially with those Ryzen 9 that go up to 16 cores, if you strongly overclock them, you could, for example, get the VRM to throttle, because some of those boards, they still had discrete MOSFETs instead of power stages. In this generation, all of these X570S models use power stages. And Ruud, maybe you can tell a little bit more about what is the difference between a power stage and a discrete MOSFET, and how will this help in terms of VRM performance?
Now, a power stage is more efficient because it integrates more parts and also has a better, especially the smart power stages, they have current and temperature sensors inside. So the controller always knows what's going on with the power stages. And the efficiency, of course, these parts are much more expensive, but it pays off in efficiency. And efficiency will also show that it will not heat up as much as the discrete parts, and that's the benefit. So you can push it even further. And for overclocking, that's what you need.
I see some questions in chat.
Yeah.
Matt is asking on YouTube, 5000 megahertz plus. I'm not sure if you're talking about CPU or memory here, but in both situations, yes, they can do 5000 megahertz plus.
I think it's the memory. I saw a question earlier, but you were in your marketing mode, so I didn't disturb you there. Someone asked what's the maximum memory frequency that these boards can run on. So probably that depends on which board you're talking about.
Yeah, depends on which board. Later on I will show you a little bit more detail, but the maximum you can achieve with those X570F boards is the Unify X with up to 5800 megahertz. That is supported, but with overclocking, you might even be able to go beyond that. Of course, this is very dependent on the memory modules that you're using. It's not like you can reach these speeds with every memory module. You really need the right chips and even cherry pick the right memory kit to be able to do those frequencies. But all boards can do 5000 plus by themselves. So if you have the right memory kit and of course use the right settings, then even the more entry level MAG series can already do 5000 plus on the memory.
Yeah, there was another question about the LON. Do we have any boards with 10 gig LON chips?
No 10 gigabit LAN, but all boards have 2.5 gigabit LAN. Also a change compared to the previous generation where many boards were still at 1 gigabit LAN, but these boards all offer 2.5 gigabit LAN.
Yeah, another question was, did we see some 8-port SATA motherboards? I lifted up the ACE, so yes, that's a 8-port SATA one, and we also have another one, which is the Carbon. Not sure if many people use 8 SATA ports at the moment, but
no, I think it's getting more and more rare. I think in the past, when people were of course combining SATA SSDs with SATA hard drives still, some people were even using up to 10 drives. But I think nowadays more and more people are also using M.2, which of course reduces the need for more SATA ports.
Yeah. Also, another question was, do you have any boards which have just as many M.2s as your competitor has? And yes, we also have one with many M.2s.
Yeah. And later on we will show you exactly how it works as well, because it has so many M.2 slots that you have to do some
I think
clever
this question
tricks.
was already 10 minutes ago, but
yeah.
yeah.
I also saw some questions about a white motherboard. We don't have any white motherboards. We get this question quite a lot, and it's a difficult one, because I know the look and feel of white motherboards quite nice, and you can do some cool things with it, for example in themed builds or case mods or stuff like that. But still, the signal quality of white PCBs is not on par with what you would get on black PCBs. So yes, we could make a white motherboard, but for example the memory support on those that heavily relies on that signal frequency, that would suffer when you would have a white PCB. So the extreme memory support that we can have on these X570S models, we would not be able to get it as high if we would have a white model. But we know that a lot of people are asking for this, so it's definitely something we will discuss. But yeah, be prepared that if there will be a white model, that it will be a trade-off with your signal quality, so that you might not be able to go as high with your memory frequency. So that's a bit of the, yeah, it's a difficult one, because I also like the look of white motherboards, so yeah, tricky.
So why no red motherboard?
Red motherboards, ooh, that's a while ago.
Yeah, that's retro.
That's so long ago that I actually don't know how they are compared to black in terms of signal quality. Because that's like, signal quality of course became a bigger topic with the more recent PCI Express generations, with the more recent memory generations, where it became increasingly important to get those extremely high bandwidths. I don't know actually if a red motherboard, how it would compare to a black PCB, for example. Would you like to see one, chap? A red motherboard?
I saw a lot in like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I used to have one as well,
Yeah.
a red motherboard. But that's, I think, even maybe even 15 years ago. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Action Brother on Twitch chat says, no red board, please.
Yeah.
Okay, that's clear.
Also, people asking for a rainbow motherboard. Yeah, we can go any color, but yeah, I think the black one, I like that one most.
Yeah, I think in terms of the combination of looks and how it performs in terms of signal quality, I think black is a very good balance. Let me get back to our slides. Because I think it's time to do some demonstrations, of course, with the Vrm Design, because we talked a lot about this. But we're also doing some quite heavy claims. For example, I already talked about our previous generation MPG series for X570, that they weren't the best in terms of Vrm design. So that's where we really put a lot of effort in. And for example, the Edge model, so the gaming X570 Gaming Edge compared to our X570S Edge. So no more Gaming Edge, just Edge. But that's a 30-degree difference when using the same processor, the same settings. So there you can really see the big difference. For example, what Ruud already explained about the difference between discrete MOSFETs versus high-end power stages, but also the 2-ounce thickened copper PCB, the improved cooling solution. So Ruud, maybe let's do some live demonstrations, because we've got this set up live here.
I think we can also make a comment about with the X570 Edge. At that time, many people was just using the 3000 series Ryzen up to the Ryzen 9 3900 when it launched. And at that time, the precision boost overdrive thing was not really a thing yet. So at that time, if you just run stock 3900, then the board is still fine. And VRM-wise, it's also going to do perfectly fine. But if you want to do overclocking, and especially if you're going to overclock a Ryzen, you're probably going to use the precision boost overdrive. We can show you what that does. And I have the system here. It's the X570S MAX Wi-Fi to be. I also have to call it MPG.
Yeah.
X570S MAX Wi-Fi. So you said it was shorter, but We also made it longer.
Yeah, it is quite long, so that's why we skipped on gaming. Otherwise, it would be gaming, Edge, Max, Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
So the S is added, of course, because this is the passive one, so for silent. The Max is added because we made a lot of changes apart from just making it passive. Because this board, the X570S Edge board, is completely different from our previous MPG X570 gaming Edge Wi-Fi motherboard that we used to have. It's really, it's a whole different board. Maybe we can also show it with your close-up cam. So you can already see that also looks quite a lot different.
I hope my battery is still okay. Ooh, it's going on that. Okay.
So this is today's testing setup. So it consists of a Ryzen 9 5950X, a 16-core processor from the latest Ryzen 5000 generation, on the new MSI MPG X570S MAX Wi-Fi motherboard. It has 32 gigs of DDR4 3600 megahertz memory. So these are the very cool MSI branded G-Skills module. I stole these from our pre-built Maverick system. So no, you cannot buy these separately. Yeah. But these are the ones you will get in the Maverick gaming bundle. Then we have the RX 6900 XT, right?
Yeah, that's this one.
Gaming model, Gaming X Trio with a triple fan cooler. So also extremely high-end graphics card on there. Then we have our very new MAG CORELIQUID C360 liquid cooler. And later on we'll give you way more details about these coolers, because these are our latest all-in-one liquid coolers.
Yeah, the camera is not picking up the colors of this one very good, so it looks quite white.
Yeah, it looks like the camera has a bit of difficulties with the brightness.
Yeah, I think it's too bright for the camera.
Yeah, it's too bright for the camera.
Don't know if I can change that, but...
And as an SSD, we have a 2 terabyte Seagate FireCuda 530 SSD, and that's one of those second generation Gen 4 Ryzen controllers.
Yep.
And below we have our MPG 850 GF power supply to power.
Yeah, it's in the bottom here.
It's hidden right there.
Don't know if we can capture it, but you have to take my word for it.
Okay. So now let's put it in practice. In the meanwhile, I'll take a look at chat.
Okay. Basically what we're going to show is performance and power, and that makes efficiency. So first we need to have a baseline, so we're going to do like a BIOS defaults run. I've kept the fan speed to 1200 RPM just to keep it quiet. It doesn't need any more speed than that. And the rest of the BIOS are defaults loaded and XMP. So the memory is running at 3600. I think it's cast latency 18 if I'm correct. I can show you in the HW info. So basically this is the the system. It's the RX 6900, the 5950X CPU, and the memory is running at 1800 with a cast latency of 18.
People are already very interested in the new liquid coolers. Guys, later on we will show you all the ins and outs. I won't go into too much details now. Let's first take a look at the X570S motherboards, and then we will take a very close look not only at the C series that we're using now, but also at the P series.
So we're gonna run HW info in the background so we can nicely capture the clock speeds, the temperature, the package power, the V-core and the MOS temperature. The MOS is, that's the VRM part, so there's a sensor inside and you can read it with this software. And then we can run a benchmark. For example, the Cinebench 20, which is a multi-core. I'm gonna run the multi-core test, basically loading all the cores up to maximum performance and maximum clock speeds. It will reach about 3700 megahertz, something like that. And it will generate a score very quickly because this is a very fast CPU. And that will give us a baseline. So when you're going to do overclocking, in the past you're going to just set a multiplier and fix it there. So you don't have any boosting algorithm anymore. If you set 4.4 gigahertz, it will run 4.4 in idle, but it will also run 4.4 in single-threaded loads and 4.4 in multi-threaded loads.
I see a couple of questions in the meanwhile.
Okay.
Nigerian's asking, is it a problem you're just using an 8-pin ATX power supply, putting power to the Ryzen 9?
No, that's no problem. And yeah, you could put more in, especially if you're overclocking. Then
like if you would do extreme overclocking, for example, with
LM2, yes,
so,
probably it's
LM2.
better to use more cables, because then the load will be just distributed over more wires, and that will help, because the cables will also impose some resistance there.
So you want to do more load balancing throughout the cables.
Yeah. So I also have a current clamp attached to it, and the maximum current I saw was about 23 amps or so. I think that's fine over 4 wires, so that's about 8 amps per wire.
I see a nice question from Mr. Masterdox.
That's almost spec.
Mr. Masterdox is asking, when exactly is it MSI's 35th year anniversary? And Ruud is working in his company for a long time, so let's test his knowledge. Ruud, do you know exactly which date MSI's birthday is?
No, I'm not sure, but it's definitely in August.
That's correct.
1986, so
that's also correct.
But I would guess 26th?
No.
Oh, damn.
The 4th.
Oh, the 4th. Oh, we already missed it.
I didn't.
You didn't? Oh, you celebrated.
Yeah.
I wasn't
I
invited.
had some cake, and you were working at home that day, I think.
Could be.
Forza E2 is asking, may I ask the room temperature? Yes, I can check it for you. It's currently 22 degrees Celsius in the room.
It feels a bit colder, to be honest.
Because you're right underneath the air conditioner.
Yeah, I feel kind of not a draft, but it's
you're like in the flow of the air conditioning.
Yeah, it's not that warm here, to be honest. Actually, outside is also not that warm, so.
I think it's colder than 22 degrees Celsius outside.
It's summer, but it's not really summer temperature here. I have to say that this setup is an open test bench, so it's excellent condition for the that's this camera, but it's excellent conditions for the water cooler for the CPU. So the CPU cooling is perfect for in this setup, so I can boost it, or I can overclock it a little higher than you could if you would build it in a case. But for the VRM it's actually worse, because inside a case those 3 fans in the radiator will generate airflow in the case, and that will help the VRM cooling, so the big block on the power stages. So in this configuration, the air around the VRM heatsinks is pretty, there's no airflow going on there. So
good for the CPU temperatures, bad for the VRM temperature.
So we can push the CPU further, and the VRM is is doing the heavy lifting for the power part, and the temperatures will be higher than you would see in a case. And this is just a regular BIOS default setting. So let's see what the temperatures did in maximum. It's just a single run, so it's not that big of a deal. But the CPU was doing about 60 degrees maximum, and the MOS was doing 35. Well, yeah. It was so short. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the MOS was 35, so it's so short it doesn't heat up. But you can expect it to stay cool in this condition on a lot of motherboards. So you don't really need a beefy motherboard like this if you're just running stock.
T-Dub is asking, by the way, where are you folks streaming from? I think because of the temperature currently, we're streaming from the Netherlands right now.
Yeah.
So it's not a very warm country, I would say.
No, I think at the moment outside, or at least in the morning, it was 18. So 18 degrees centigrade. Oh, I should have plugged, if you want to see the BIOS and see what I'm doing, I have to unplug the...
yeah, unfortunately, it's impossible to have like on Ruud's monitor and in the capture card simultaneously. So we will unplug Ruud's monitor, so he cannot see it on his monitor anymore.
Yeah, I have to watch the big screen there and see if I can
And Ruud is wearing his glasses, so it should be fine.
Hopefully the capture card will capture the BIOS. Yeah, there we go.
Chris Willow is saying, I see the pump in the radiator. You saw that correctly?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's basically the same kind of radiator pump as the 360R, I would say.
Yeah, in terms of product design, it's quite similar, like where everything is positioned.
Yeah, only the CPU block has nice LEDs on it. Okay, so we're in the BIOS. So everything is BIOS default and only enabled XMP and lowered the RPMs on the fan. So I just set it to 44% across the temperature range. There's multiple ways of overclocking. You can just go out and start testing what the maximum multiplier is for this CPU. I could reach about 46.5, so you will have 4.65 gigahertz on this CPU. This is not the best one, I would say. After that, I need to put in so much power that this cooling configuration cannot handle that. Yeah, I think this setup will top out at 4.65 gigahertz. But there's a better way of overclocking, and I want to show you that one first. And that's just going into the BIOS, going to AMD Advanced CPU Configuration, going to AMD Overclocking, and then you will see Precision Boost Overdrive. And you just have to enable that, and you're good to go. So we had a 9700 score in the Cinebench, 9703 if I'm correct, if I remember correctly. And just by enabling Precision Boost Overdrive, we will get a boost, and we'll see how much. Of course, it will also consume more power, that's for sure.
Yeah,
but
that's always the trade-off. When you're doing overclocking, you will consume more power. And it will potentially also make your system louder, for example.
Yeah.
And you will always lose a little bit of efficiency as well.
The good thing about Precision Boost Overdrive is that it will just run cool and quiet in idle or light loads. So
because
it's
it will
the same
dynamically go up and down.
Exactly. So it just boosts whenever it's needed, and it will try to boost as high as it can, or as high as the BIOS allows it. And also monitoring the temperature. So if you have a better cooling, it will boost higher. And also if you have a better CPU, it will boost higher. So there is some variation between the same CPUs. If you have another 5950X, it will behave slightly different. I don't remember the power exactly. Didn't check it very well in the previous stream, but it should be around 135, 140 max. Now you already can see that the package power is going up to closely to 250. So that's quite a bit of extra power needed. Hopefully it will also generate a lot more, a higher score at least. And also the clock speeds are generally much higher. It's at 4325 currently, and before it was about 3700-ish. So that's quite a nice boost just by enabling one BIOS setting. And that will give you 11,073 points.
So that's already quite a big leap.
That's a big jump, yeah. And you do need a power supply on your motherboard that's capable of doing that. And you also
I was currently asking in Twitch chat, how much power does a PSU have? Currently, the one we're using is 850 watts.
Yeah, 850 watt at the maximum. I also have a wall meter here, and this current setup is drawing around 360, 370 watts in this mode, so in Precision Boost Overdrive.
So that's only load on the CPU. We're not currently stressing the GPU. Then, of course, we could go quite a bit higher.
Of course, this is all fine if you're doing normal benchmarks or normal programs that don't behave like a power virus. So, for example, programs like Prime 95 or OCCT or anything that's based on LinPack kind of LinPack computing, that will tax the AVX a lot more. So basically drawing a lot more current, and that will also make the CPU a lot hotter, or it will shoot up in temperature really quickly. And in this mode, it will actually shut down the system because it gets overheated so quickly.
So that's pure protection.
So that's a no-go. So how can we prevent that from happening? Well, there are some extra tweaks. Hang on, I'm gonna unplug the. Now it's in 4K mode again, Mike.
Yeah, because our capture card can support 4K. If you unplug your monitor, then it will only detect the capture card.
Also, last week, people were asking, why are you bashing the delete button to go into BIOS? I'm not doing anything.
No,
but we're still doing inside the BIOS right about now. I hope. There we go.
I still prefer bashing that button.
Yeah, you can still do that.
I see a question in chat. Nabi is asking, which motherboard should I get for the Ryzen 5 5600 and Radeon 6600 XT? I'm looking for an X570 because of the second PCI Express Gen 4 M.2. For a 5600G and the 6600 XT, I think in most situations, one of the MAG models would already be very much sufficient for that.
Yeah.
Even if you're extremely overclocking that 5600G, all those boards can easily run it, even the MAG series. Depends a bit on the feature set you want and how much RGB you want, of course. Whether or not you, for example, need Wi-Fi connectivity. But personally, for that combination, I would look at like a Torpedo or a Tomahawk. The rest will probably be overkill for that configuration.
I personally like the Tomahawk.
Yeah, also. And Torpedo as well. Depends on if you want Wi-Fi or not.
Okay, so before we had just enabled the Precision Boost Overdrive, but there's more to it than that. You can actually tweak it a little bit, and you can also set the maximum power. That's the PPT. What PBO or Precision Boost Overdrive is doing is actually not that much different than what most motherboards do on Intel already, and that's giving it all the power capacity, or giving it room to boost higher. And that's also what most MSI Intel motherboards are doing. They have an unlimited power limit. So when you drop in the CPU, usually you're greeted with the cooler selection, and if you select you have a beefy cooler, then the power limits will be unlocked on your BIOS. That will give you maximum performance, but also maximum power draw for the boosting inside the CPU. So PBO is not that much different, only the power limits are called have different names, basically. That's what happens. So I'm gonna before I saw the power was doing about 250 in the Cinebench, so let's allow it to have a little bit more, and I'll just leave the current to 240 amps max, and that will limit that. The system will automatically shut down as soon as I'm running any power virus like Prime 95 or OCCT, AIDA, FPU test, those kind of things. Any Linpack kind of stability test, I would say. There's another key feature that you can play with. Maybe we can show you that right away as well, and that's the curve.
And Edwin K was just asking in YouTube chat,
oh,
how can you underclock and undervolt in the BIOS? Well, Curve Optimizer, you can actually use it to undervolt it quite a bit. That's also how I use it, because I'm using a 5600X in my personal system, but it's in an extremely small case. So I'm using this to reduce my power draw as well by undervolting it through the Curve Optimizer.
Yeah, the undervolting also means that it will boost higher. So as long as
because
it's
your
stable,
temperatures are lower.
Exactly, and the current will be lower. So the CPU says, okay, you still have room to boost. Let's do that. So
it will actually, it makes your power consumption go down and the speed of your CPU go up. That's quite contradictive, but that's what happened when I fiddled around with the settings and with the Curve Optimizer a bit and undervolted it through Curve Optimizer.
Yeah, the Curve Optimizer, you can choose all core or per core. If you're gonna do per core, then you need a lot of time. So let's do just the all core, and you can give it more voltage or negative voltage, so that's a negative voltage offset. That's
So
an
that's
undervolt.
undervolting.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to just try. I mean, you can start with 10 and then go up to 20 and then go up to 30 and then it will crash probably. At least this system will.
Mine can run it. 5600X, it depends on which one, because Peter also has a 5600X. He copied exactly my settings, but his system could not do that much undervolt. So it really depends. This is really the silicon lottery of CPUs.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're lucky with your CPU, also if you, for example, run a Ryzen 5 5600X, you can probably go a little bit further than, for example, with this Ryzen 9 5950X. But yeah, it's really trial and error what your specific CPU can do in terms of the magnitude. So the higher the number you set, the bigger the offset is, so the bigger the undervolt is you're giving your CPU.
So this one it can do, I have tested it before of course, 20 millivolts as an undervolt. And
that's quite
it's
a lot
called
for a Ryzen 9.
curve optimizer because actually the CPU has a voltage frequency curve and it just lowers the whole curve by 20 millivolts. So that's very similar to the, for example, the voltage frequency curve. You can add it in Afterburner with NVIDIA cards. It is a very similar way. With Afterburner and NVIDIA cards, you can change every little dot on that curve. With this one, you can only lower the curve exactly, or you can do it per core.
Mr. Masterdox is saying the CPUs with more cores do not have as much room for lowering the curve optimizer. That's correct. In general, the ones with fewer cores, you can give a bigger undervolt and they will still run stable. So for example, the 5600X I'm using with 30 as a value. With this system that will crash. With some other 5600X it can also crash. But in general, the lower the core count, the bigger undervolt you can give it without making it unstable.
Yeah, 25 was almost stable on this one, but it will crash about.
And that's a lot for a Ryzen 9, because I've seen Ryzen 9s that already crashed when going anywhere beyond 15, for example.
This is with PBO, so that raises the voltage, and this lowers it a little bit. If I'm doing no PBO, so setting the PBO limits to disabled, you're still running the stock limits. Then this one can only do -15. So with PBO I can lower it a little bit further. So these are the limits I've set, and you can also go with the disabled, then you're just running with the standard AMD limits. So while the curve optimizer is inside the PBO menu, you can still use it with the default AMD limits in check. Okay, let's save that and exit and see what it does. And see if we can run Prime without ruining the board or letting it crash.
Esteban is asking, how would you say the X570S Ace compares with the previous X570 Godlike? And why no Godlike this time? Well, the reason we don't have a Godlike this time is, of course, we have a certain limited number of resources, so we have to make choices. It's more of a refresh launch than a completely new product launch. So all the early adopters probably already own an X570 motherboard, and that's also the target group that usually chooses for the Godlike. Those are the people that once it's available, they directly buy it. So those people already probably have an X570 Godlike, and it's not likely that they're going for a new motherboard if they already have an X571, because it will still run the latest generation AMD Ryzen processors perfectly fine. So that's why we don't have a Godlike. How it compares, it depends a bit on how you watch it. Like for example, the Godlike has the dynamic dashboard, so the small screen on the motherboard, features like that. Ace doesn't have those kind of features. But in terms of VRM performance, for example, the Ace has a direct 16 phase for the V-core with 90 amp smart power stages, and the Godlike has a 14 phase VRM design with 70 amp power stages. So the X570S Ace in terms of VRM performance is quite a bit stronger than the X570 Godlike, but the X570 Godlike is already at such a level that it's already plenty to overclock even the top-end Ryzen 9 processors. So yes, the Ace is even stronger, but still the Godlike can run basically everything you throw at it.
Okay, so in the meantime, I've already run the Cinebench, so we don't have to wait for it. As you can see here, the score is about 470 points higher. This is the old score, the 11,073, so 11,073. Now we have 11,476. So it will give you 400 points extra, and that's just because we lowered the voltage. So we've undervolted it, but the whole curve. So no matter what load you put on it, it will always have a lower power consumption, and therefore it can boost higher because there's more room to boost. As you can see, the clock speeds are also slightly higher. Before we had about 4325 on the end, and now we have 4450. So that's about 125 megahertz extra just by undervolting it a little bit. Of course, you would think that it will lower the power, but actually it doesn't. It just uses that extra room and uses all that power to boost it higher and get more performance. During this time it was doing about 253, so that's a little bit more than the power it was doing before. It was about 248. So to simulate what we've also saw in the presentation, was running Prime 95, and yes, I've kept it to the maximum power limit or current limit of 240 amps. It's doing about slightly over 4 gigahertz. It's still doing 250 watts, and if I look at the wall meter, it's doing now about 388. Something like that. It fluctuates a little bit, so close to 390 watts.
So this is running all 16 cores at 100% load with Precision Boost, Overdrive and Curve Optimize.
Now what we want to see now is what the Vrm temperature is doing. So VRMs or MOSFETs or power stages can run up to 110 degrees without any problem. After that, they will have a safety feature and it will start throttling. So it will give the CPU a message, slow down because we can't handle the heat anymore. And then you will see a sudden drop in speed.
To make sure your board doesn't melt.
Yeah, so that's what normally would happen. Yeah. The throttling or thermal throttling of the VRM is just a safety measure to protect the board and the MOSFETs. With this board, you can run this for, in the presentation it said 1 hour, and then it will get up to about 70, 74.
Wait, I'll open it right up.
I think the yellow part, but my zoom is missing.
73 degrees Celsius.
73, okay.
Yeah.
And not sure how they've tested it. This is tested in our HQ. Mm-hmm. So this is with zero airflow. So this is basically worst case scenario for a VRM. For a VRM. The good thing about this VRM is that it has plenty of surface area. So and also the metal heatsink is very big, so it can accumulate a lot of heat before it starts quickly heating up. I'm not sure what you want to show.
The VRM, the cooling. Maybe you can use your camera.
Yes, sorry. My battery is running out of my... So it has all kinds of ribs here, and it's a very solid block. It's not a plastic cap or anything. It's all aluminum, black aluminum. And on top there's also a smaller one, but that's usually because it only houses 2 of the core phases, and the rest is for the uncore, so anything but the core. Yeah. So it's slowly warming up, and it's only slightly warm to the touch. if you use your fingers. So
and this is pretty much a torture test. Prime
this
95
is a torture
with
test,
a
yes.
16-core processor, so that's
Yeah.
the maximum number of cores you can get on this platform.
You could push it a little bit further since the CPU is getting pretty close with 90C. That's pretty close to what you want. I mean, you want to definitely keep it under 100. At least that's what I want. I want to use this CPU later on as well. And 90C is still fine, but yeah, if you push it even further, for example, if you do like a fixed ratio overclocking, you can push it further. So at the moment it's doing like 4.1 on Prime 95 and 4.4 on Cinebench. If you push it like 4.6, 4.65, then it needs more voltage, and then the current increase will also start adding up quickly. And
By the way, guys, don't
see
try this at home if you have limited cooling, for example, because we're currently using a 360mm radiator.
Yeah.
Like the amount of power we're
Yeah.
currently putting through this processor, you don't want to do that if you have limited CPU cooling.
No, exactly. So that's yeah. This is a very extreme test, I would say.
Yeah. Because you can see it reaches 90 degrees, and this is really a lot of cooling already. 360mm radiator, it's a strong liquid cooler.
Yeah.
If you're running an air cooler, for example,
yeah,
don't try it.
If I put this system inside a case, no matter how well ventilated the case is, I cannot keep this one under 100 degrees.
No.
So the CPU will heat up definitely more than that. So this is only if you're doing if you're doing an open bench.
FPS nerd is asking, 90 degrees is still fine? No way, bro.
Actually,
it's
yes,
okay. If you don't want to run this 24/7, but it is fine for a test like this.
Yeah.
We're not going to kill it today, I can promise you that.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll kill it later, but that will be with a different test.
No, I already tried to kill it, or accidentally tried to kill it, but yeah.
Did it work?
No, yeah, I did a fixed multiplier overclock, and I ran Prime 95, and I just powered down within 1 second. So before I could blink, then yeah. So the protection mechanisms on this board are quite okay. And I definitely needed that one. If I would have done this like 5 or 10 years ago, then yeah, probably the CPU and maybe also the motherboard was toast.
Bob Kinney says always liquid cool with overclocking. It depends a bit. We're currently using a 5950X, so that's a 16-core part. But if you're running maybe a Ryzen 5 5600X, you can perfectly fine overclock. If you have like one of the bigger air coolers, you can perfectly overclock a Ryzen 5 on that. But like in the current configuration, like we're doing now, torture testing a 16-core Ryzen 9, then yes, use a bigger liquid cooler to do that. But like especially like the bigger air coolers, they can also be quite strong. Not as strong as a 360mm radiator, but they're pretty decent coolers for Ryzen 9, Ryzen 7, or a Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7.
Yeah, Ryzen 7
and Ryzen
also
9
doesn't really need that much power. So
no.
It's only the Ryzen 9s that need more power.
And also not if you're running them at stock. You don't get close to what we're currently doing.
No. The stock would cap it at 140.
Yeah, indeed.
142, I believe, as maximum power. So even if you run Prime 95, it will never go over the 142 watts. So we're doing, now it's about 220 watts. So it slowed down a little bit, but that can also be because of the Prime 95 change of the load. I just ran small FFTs and some
it always changes a bit
sizes,
in Prime 95 when you run it. You can see it go up and down a bit.
Maybe I should have selected a fixed size, then it should be a very consistent load. But we're already running about 8 minutes now, so and it's doing about 68. And you think, okay, 68, that's quite warm. Well, actually for a MOSFET it's not. It's just perfectly fine. And like I said, it's in a worst case scenario, so no airflow around the heat sinks. So in a case, this would heat up the CPU a lot and will cool down the MOSFETs also a lot. So CPU would go up like 15 degrees, I would guess, and the MOSFET would probably drop down 5 or 10 degrees.
TW is saying VRMs are doing great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfectly fine.
If you run this longer, then it will probably end up something close to what the presentation would say. I think I haven't tried it for a full hour, but I definitely ran it like 15-20 minutes. Not sure how long I did.
Yeah, they were running it at maximum, what was it, 73 degrees Celsius.
Yeah. And we don't know the airflow conditions in that test. So in a normal test, you would have some airflow at least.
Yeah, I think it's also test bench test, from what I can see.
Yeah.
And the ambient temperature was slightly higher there than it is here.
Yeah, it's in Taiwan, so it's
Taiwan
probably
is
warmer
usually,
than in the Netherlands. Yeah.
Yeah, ambient temperature 25.4, and we're currently at 22 approximately. So we will probably be a couple of degrees Celsius lower than the 73 that was in that test.
Okay. It's at 70 at the moment, so I can wait and let it warm up a little further, but we can also try and see if we can push it to a higher speed even further with the fixed multiplier.
Sounds good.
And you will probably see also some even higher power draw. I know Prime 95 is already very high in power consumption because of the AVX part, but it was capped because we put some limits in the BIOS. Let's do. Oh, it's going 4K again. Yeah. So I've created a batch file that just goes into the BIOS.
So no more button bashing.
So I don't need to put the delete button. Have to torture it.
Kind of takes away from the experience. So.
yeah, but I've had my fair share of delete button
delete bashing.
Yeah.
Okay,
there we go.
is asking, which new X570S board would you recommend for the Ryzen 7 5700G? 5700G is only a 65 watt TDP part, so it's like in terms of Vrm design, any board would do. You could even overclock it on any of these boards, even the MAG models. So it all depends on the feature set you need, basically. And recommended 3600 32 gigabyte memory kit. Preferably take one that's on the QVL, so then you know it is fully tested and supported. And also lower latencies will help you quite a bit, especially with AMD. So if you, for example, have a 3600 CL16 kit, that will perform a little bit better than when you, for example, have a 3600 CL18 kit. So try to get one that's on the QVL list, so you're sure that it's supported, tested, etc. And go for a lower latency if the price increase is not a lot, of course, because it's not a tremendous performance difference between CL16, CL18 on 3600 megahertz, but it will be some difference. So just take a look at the price. Do you think it's worth it? If the price increase is limited, then go for the CL16 kit, for example. If it's a big price increase, then just go with the CL18, I would say.
So I made some settings. Yeah, the fans go brrr, somebody says. Well, yes, I've selected to run the maximum fan speeds because we're going to push it a little further. I've selected a multiplier of 46.5, so basically we're going to do 4.65 gigahertz. And I've selected a voltage of 1.325 volts, and in override mode, so that's basically constant voltage. And I've selected the load line calibration of level 5, if I've read it correctly. The load line calibration will, the higher, or the lower the number, so level 1 puts in the most voltage. If you apply a load, it will try to keep the voltage as high as possible. In a normal situation, if you draw power from a power supply or power circuitry, the voltage will drop as the current increases. That's a normal behavior of the electronics. And with the load line calibration, it will try to compensate for that drop in voltage. And level 1 is compensating the most, and level 8 is doing almost nothing, so it just lets it drop the furthest. You can play with this, and also there's some good videos about that, what it's doing from Buildzoid or actually hardware overclocking. And he has a ton of
Buildzoid
insights
is the
about
person,
this.
and his YouTube channel is called actually
Yeah,
Hardware
exactly. Yeah,
Overclocking.
but he's quite a famous guy for overclocking and power circuits. So if I need to know about this kind of stuff, I'll also always watch his YouTube channel. Okay, let's save and exit, and then we'll see what the power does. Yeah, Mr. Masterdogs was asking what's the command, and Marek has an answer. That's exactly correct. There's one thing you need to add, and that's you need to run the batch file. You need to run in administrator mode. So with administrator rights, I will open it up so you can see what the command is.
Oh, yeah, let's quickly take a look at that.
Yeah, I'll explain what it is. This part is just a trick to create like an admin mode batch file. And the funny thing is that Windows, if you run the command once, it doesn't do anything. That's stupid, right? Because if I run it the second time, then it will actually go into the BIOS. So I just made a batch file and it runs the command twice.
Okay, guys, take a screenshot now, then you can copy it. So I give you 3
It's on
more
YouTube,
seconds.
you can watch it later.
Yeah, that's true. You can do that as well.
So for anybody who wants to get into the in the BIOS quickly and easy,
just copy
this
that.
this batch file you can just use.
And before we continue with testing, I quickly want to remind you that we have a very cool giveaway today, because we're giving away 3 bundles. Well, we gave away 1, so we've got 2 more to give away, consisting of an AMD Ryzen 5 5600G APU. So that's one of those new AMD Cezanne APUs that were launched on the 5th of August, in combination with the MAG B550 Tomahawk motherboard. You got one next to you, right?
Yeah, sorry, yes. Wasn't paying attention, I was just checking if my settings were done right.
And then it's the CPU closest to you.
Okay.
So if you want to win this combination, the Ryzen 5 5600G with the MAG B550 Tomahawk motherboard, go to msi.com/to/insider, or follow the direct link that the bot will put in the Twitch and the YouTube chat every 5 minutes. Within Gleam, you can perform several actions. The more actions you perform, the bigger chance you will have to win. And also, if you're a returning visitor, make sure also to claim your loyalty bonus to have a slight edge in the giveaway. So make sure to do so.
Okay.
2 more bundles to give away in the stream. Back to you, Ruud.
Okay. Yeah, so we're running 4.65 gigahertz. It's a fixed ratio, so it will not change if everything goes well. And let's see what the performance is and see what the power draw does. So it starts and it's about doing 270 watts now instead of the 250 watts. And I can show you what it's doing real quickly. I'm not sure if we can catch it.
Yes.
So it's doing 423 something watts on the wall. Okay. I'll go back to the other one. Yeah. So we went from the wall power about 204 watts in default mode to 423 watts in overclock mode. And we're just shy of the 12,000 points. If I run it again, maybe we'll get 12,000 points.
Within the margin of error.
Yeah. I saw it before that it was doing 12, so yeah, very close 12,000. I'll run it again. Let's see if we can beat that. But you can also see the CPU temperature is shooting up, even though that I've raised the fan speed quite a bit. It's doing 2000 RPM on 3 fans now, and it's doing
Package power
98.6, and this is in an open test bench, so yeah, we're not gonna want to push it any further. It's
currently 277
yeah, we got
watts.
12,000.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there we go.
12,018. Yay! But it got up to 99.8, so that's perfectly fine. It's well below the 100 degree centigrade, my personal threshold.
Foxy Feed is asking in Twitch chat, is that the whole system? The package power you're currently seeing is only the CPU.
Yeah, yeah.
The one that Ruud was showing on the wall power, that's what the whole system draws.
Yeah. So if I turn it back to default mode, and then you would score about 9,700 points, then it's only doing 200 watts on the wall. So the CPU, or the GPU isn't doing anything, and the SSD
idle,
isn't doing anything either. The only thing doing extra is the fans, but they don't draw that much power. So the bulk of the 220 watt power is going into the CPU extra. So it goes from 140 to 270. But also extra power is, of course, lost in the power circuitry. But most of the power is going into the CPU. So usually I also check the wall power, because the software readings when you're doing overclocking isn't always 100% correct. So always check with hardware measurements as well. But that's of course I cannot run Prime 95 like this, because it will try to catch fire very quickly. But yeah, for just performance, this is great. One thing you should know about fixed ratio overclocking is that if you do single-threaded benchmarks, I'm going to do the single-threaded Cinebench 15, because it doesn't take that much time. It still takes quite a bit time. This performance will be lower than default. So your single-threaded performance will be lower with a fixed ratio, even if it's a high fixed ratio.
Because it's locked at currently
because it's 4.65.
Yeah, and otherwise it can boost higher for that single specific
And in
core.
default, it will boost up to close to 5 gigahertz, sometimes over 5 gigahertz. 5.05 is the maximum boost that this CPU will do in normal mode, and that's what you will lose. So I'm going to tell you what the default score was. That's 272 in this test, and let's find out what this mega overclock, or the maximum fixed ratio overclock on this configuration does. So
Dave Rennie is asking what are the Vrm Temps. Well, this is relatively short, and it's only single core as well. So this doesn't really stress the VRM.
I can show you the power on the wall meter. This is not even close to the 400 we're drawing.
So we're not currently really stressing the VRM, but previously we did a test with a Prime 95, running 100% load on all 16 cores while being overclocked, and that one was maxing out at approximately 70 degrees Celsius.
Sorry, let me also run the HW info, because the other score was also with HW info running in the background.
Yeah, so as you can see right now, the VRM is only 39 degrees Celsius.
The package power is about 60 watts.
Yeah, which is
on the CPU.
Relatively
Not
low.
sure if that's 100% correct, but it's a good approximation.
Yeah, it's only one core under full load. So.
Yeah, usually there's two cores are the favorite ones. In this CPU, it's the core 0 and the core 6. Those are the preferred cores, as they call it, and that's the one that's doing most of the load. So the load is switched between these two cores and alternating, because then one core can cool off and the other one that's already cooled off is a little bit more efficient at that time. Maybe I can also show that in the core usage. So the core 0, it has 2 threads. It's also alternating. Sometimes it's core 0, core thread 1 and thread 2, and then it should also sometimes do core 6, which I'm not seeing right now because it just finished. Okay, sorry.
There's a question from GuxTV in YouTube chat. Hey guys, I hope you remember me. I definitely do remember your name. Quick question, do you intend to bring an X570 SI Unify, so mini ITX, No, we're currently not. We also on the previous generation we didn't have a mini ITX model for X570, and the main reason for that is that there is not much benefit to X570 on mini ITX. So with B550 you can do almost everything that X570 can do at a more competitive price. So on a bigger motherboard, of course, you have more expansion slots, and that's where you will benefit from an X570 chipset. On mini ITX, the maximum number of M.2 slots will be 2, so the only difference would be that your secondary M.2 slot could be Gen 4, whereas on B550 only your primary slot will be Gen 4. But that will be your only main benefit of having X570 on mini ITX, while going from B550 to X570, X570S in this situation, but physically the same chip, will make it quite a bit more expensive. And we think it wouldn't be worth it for such, well, the only extra main feature you would get is Gen 4 on your second M.2 slot. We don't think that price increase would be worth it. And that would also take away resources, because we don't think for many people it will be an interesting model, because we think like for over 90% of the people, still the B550 mini ITX model would be more interesting because it's more competitively priced and almost offers the same feature set. So then it's not worth it to spend resources on the X570S mini ITX model. So that's why we decided to stick to B550 for mini ITX, which is actually a very nice motherboard. That's also the one I'm using myself, so the B550i Gaming Edge Wi-Fi. And that one also has an extremely strong VRM design. So even if you want to run a Ryzen 9 5950X like we're using today, you can easily run that on the B550 mini ITX board. The only thing is, of course, can you properly cool the CPU if you're running a mini ITX case? That's the main question then. But in terms of VRM design, even the B550 mini ITX board can easily run even top-end Ryzen 9 CPUs.
Yeah. So the score is 258 compared to the 272 in default mode. And if I look at the PBO, the Precision Boost Overdrive, it was 277. So even though this will generate a lot more performance in a multi-threaded load, it will lose some single-threaded performance because of the fixed multiplier. So I think PBO or Precision Boost Overdrive is the best way to go for AMD, and it's also quite flexible. So.
Flying Creamy Pie is asking, does the B550 Mini ITX support Ryzen 9 when overclocked heavily as well? With Mini ITX, your CPU cooling will be the main bottleneck, not the VRM on that board. There are not really Mini ITX cases that support, for example, a 360mm radiator, and if they do, then it's not really a Mini ITX case anymore because it will be too big. So you will have to do with a smaller CPU cooler, and then you will run into the limits of the CPU cooling way faster than you will run into the limits of the B550i Gaming Edge Wi-Fi. So yeah, you can definitely overclock a Ryzen 9 CPU on there, but if you're going to put it in a Mini ITX case, you will run into CPU cooling limits depending on the space you have. Like I, for example, use that motherboard in a very, very small case. It's only a 7-liter case, and I'm running, for example, a 92mm radiator. You're not going to do a heavy overclock on a Ryzen 9 with a 92mm radiator.
I think Ryzen 9, you probably need 240 at the minimum.
Yeah, depends a bit on the settings. You could
for
undervolt it, and then,
overclocking,
for overclocking definitely.
For stock settings, I think most coolers will be fine.
Yeah.
Because it's limited to the 140 watts. But if you're going like 200 watts, then I think 240 radiator is the minimum. If you want to do over 200, then you probably go a little bit higher with the 360 or 280. Yeah.
Sam is asking, how about B550 Modern Max for the Ryzen 5 3600? Perfectly fine combination. Only thing with the B450 is that you will not get PCI Express Gen 5, even though your Ryzen 5 3600 can support it. So you will lose out on PCI Express Gen 4, but other than that, perfectly fine combination. So if you don't need PCI Express Gen 4, no issue at all.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So what else do you want to show?
Oh, I have a lot of stuff to still talk about.
Okay.
I got some more slides for you as well.
Okay.
Because of course we've been showing a lot about temperatures and stuff, but that's not only the components on there, also the cooling plays quite a big factor in here. Ruud already showed you the Vrm cooling up close, so on the edge, for example, you could already see the extended heatsink cooling with a fully aluminum cover, so no plastic on there, which also increases the surface area for cooling. On certain models we also have a heat pipe added there. Maybe you can grab one, Ruud? Like the carbon or something.
The carbon has, yes. Okay.
There you can see that in between the heat sinks you will get a heat pipe.
It's hard to capture because it's so
Yeah,
close together. These two blocks are attached with a small, silver colored heat pipe.
Yeah, it's a nickel plated heat pipe.
Yeah, nickel. Yeah, okay. Maybe at the end you can see it a little bit. No, it's it's quite well hidden, I must say.
It's well hidden between the heat sinks, but they're connected through a heat pipe.
I think this one shows it better, but maybe you want to show that later. This is the ace. So.
Oh, you can do some peeling, Ruud. I see some
I
plastic on
saw
there.
that, yeah.
Do it.
Okay, here we go. There we see it's a flattened heat pipe on this one, and that's attaching this block with that one, so it transfers the heat between them even.
Ruud,
using
everyone is waiting for you to peel off that plastic.
Yeah. Maybe I should like do it like this, a little bit closer. There it goes.
Always such a good moment. So
And
it's
there's
good
another
that you
one,
have
there's
this
another
board now. Do you have a screwdriver nearby?
I haven't prepared, but I saw one.
I think
There's
on the
another one.
right
Oh,
there should be one on the box.
Let's
Ooh,
go.
even more peeling.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Because maybe you can remove one of those M.2 heatsinks.
I saw a screwdriver here. I'm not sure if it's the right size.
I think the blue one should be.
The blue one, yeah, the crooked one. What do you want to see?
Can you screw off a random M.2 heatsink?
The random, I will go with the fast one, or the one attached to the CPU. It's not really faster in generation, but closer to the CPU usually nets the fastest
But
speed.
here we see that now also on the Ace we have dual-sided M.2 shield frozzer. So that means that you don't only get cooling on top of the SSD, but also on the bottom part.
Yeah,
and that has to do with more and more SSDs get chips on both sides of the SSDs.
yeah, especially the larger capacity 2
yeah,
terabyte
indeed.
ones. Yeah.
They're getting bigger and bigger, those SSDs.
Yep.
So that's why we also added cooling on the bottom, and this is available on all 4 slots on the Ace.
Yeah.
So let me quickly switch while Ruud reassembles the board. We go to an exploded view. Oh, there we go, of the Ace. So there you can see the heat pipe. Here it's properly visible, which is hidden between the two Vrm heatsinks with the aluminum cover, of course. There are also additional choke pads. So there are not only thermal pads in between the Vrm cooling and the power stages, but also in between the chokes and the cooling. Maybe we can show that up close as well.
What do you want to see?
The pads on the chokes.
Pads.
So right now the chokes are also covered underneath the heatsink, and there are thermal pads in between. And it's not that the chokes themselves produce a lot of heat, but because they're located very close to the MOS, so to the power stages in this situation, it offers quite a bit more surface area for heat dissipation from the Vrm area to the Vrm heatsink.
Also, the chokes are, for the large part, are made of metal, so they conduct the heat from the PCB very well.
Yeah, really well.
So it transfers the heat from the PCB to the heatsink.
Yeah, and this is also a change compared to the previous generation. We didn't have this yet on our X570 boards, and actually all our X570S boards have this additional choke pad. So all the way up from the MAG all the way up to the MEG series motherboards.
Yeah.
Of course, you can see the passive cooling on the chipset here. No more fan.
Nope.
So that's also why it's a slightly bigger heatsink than in the previous generation. So a lot of cooling. And if you turn it around, there you can see an extra backplate on the back of the Vrm Design.
Yeah.
And that will also help to cool the VRM.
Yeah, also thermal pads in between, so that will transfer the heat.
Can you show it from the side maybe?
Yeah,
I'm not sure if we can properly see it.
There's a gray.
Yeah, so there's a thermal pad between the backplate and the PCB. So that's the back of the power stages. And that will also help to dissipate the heat.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit hard to see on the side of the PCB, but let me switch to the slide so you can properly see it. Because the PCBs in this generation on all motherboards have 2 ounce thickened copper, and that means there's more copper in the PCB, and that copper is very good at dissipating heat as well. So the PCB material will also help to dissipate more heat from all the components that need cooling. So not only chipset, but also VRM, etc., etc. This is available on all X570S motherboards, and the MPG and the MEG models also offer a server-grade PCB, and that will also help, for example, with the signal quality, so to reach even higher memory frequencies and stuff like that. And all of them offer a 6-layer PCB. One of our boards, the Unify X, is specifically designed for overclocking. Let's quickly take a look at it. So you can, for example, this one has an extreme VRM design with a direct 16-phase 90 amp power design. But you can also see it in that it only has 2 DIMM slots, and that's to get an even clearer memory signal to really reach those extreme memory speeds. And I actually have some overclocking records already to show on this board. So our in-house overclocker, Top PC, and his department, they already tested a lot with this. And for example, with the new Cezanne APUs, and they've already been able to reach over 6,000 megahertz on both the Ryzen 7 5700G and one of the Pro models, the 5750G. We're both able to go beyond 6 gigahertz on the AMD X570S Unify X MAX. But this board, because it has 2 DIMM slots, also really shines in the memory department. And there we see, for example, that it already reached 5700 megahertz. But the real big thing here is that the fabric clock, so that's the FCLK as many people will know it, that's part of the design of AMD Ryzen CPUs, is the Infinity Fabric, and the fabric clock goes all the way up to 2850. So if you have the DDR frequency, you get a perfect balance between the frequencies of your memory and the Infinity Fabric, and by having them matched, you can get lower latencies than when they would be out of sync. So that's why it's very interesting to reach those extremely high fabric clocks and get your memory frequency increased with it. So 2850, that's really insane. This is not something you can do with, for example, the 5000 series CPUs. So the 5000X series, they cannot reach these kind of Infinity Fabric clocks. I actually have a very nice graph to show you the differences between Vrm CPUs and the Cezanne APUs. So this is a graph where you see when you increase the memory speed and you also increase the fabric clock with it, you can do that up to a certain extent. So up to DDR4 4133 with this specific CPU, you were able to keep increasing your fabric clock with it. So in this situation, you divide it by 2 and you have the fabric clock. After that, you see you can still increase the memory frequency, but you cannot increase your fabric clock anymore. So they get out of sync, and that will give you a certain penalty in latency. So you see that when you have them exactly in sync, you will get a lower latency. But once your fabric clock cannot increase anymore, but your DDR frequency can still increase, then they're out of sync and the latency increases a little bit. And this has to do with the design of the CPU, why you can do this on, for example, a Cezanne APU, but you cannot do this beyond a certain extent on a Vrm CPU. Because for the Vrm CPUs, they have a chiplet design, so they have separate chips to divide the cores, for example. The Cezanne APUs, they have a monolithic design, so they are integrated in one chip. This also allows the CPU to go even higher in the Infinity Fabric clock, And by increasing that and also increasing the DDR frequency, you can keep them in sync up to way higher frequencies, and that will keep lowering that latency. So here you can see the difference. This is what you get with Vrm. At a certain point you cannot increase the fabric clock anymore, so the DDR frequency and the fabric frequency are out of sync, and that will increase the latency. But when having the monolithic design of the Cezanne APU, you can increase that fabric clock. Of course, there's also a limit to it at a certain point, but we already saw that our in-house overclocker could do 2850 megahertz. So times 2 is 5700 megahertz, what you can do on your DDR4 while having those two in sync. And you will still get that latency decrease with these APUs. So that's something where APUs are particularly good at when comparing them, for example, to the Vrm CPUs. Then let's talk a little bit more about performance, because we've been talking, of course, about performance from the VRM side of things, which is also related to temperature, but there's a lot more performance to the board than just the CPU. And the first one I wanted to talk about is the M.2, because our UniFi X is not only extremely suitable for overclocking, it's also a very interesting board for M.2 storage, because this one can handle up to 6 M.2 SSDs, and all of them support PCI Express Gen 4. You need some clever tricks to be able to do that, so later on I will tell you everything about how that works, because you will get some limitations elsewhere in the board if you're actually running 6 of those Gen 4 M.2 SSDs. But for example, when running 6 of these SSDs in RAID 0, you can get insane bandwidth for your storage. So it's extremely fast. Of course, if you're going to do this, you also need a CPU that can support PCI Express Gen 4. Otherwise, you will not get anywhere near these storage bandwidths. So in this situation, it's a 5800X that it was used with. Also works with 3000 series. All the generations don't support PCI Express Gen 4. Okay, let's take a look at what this board looks like from a PCI Express lane switching perspective. So let's go through all the M.2 slots. Primary M.2 slot, you just have, like from the CPU, if you're running, for example, a Vrm CPU, you have 24 PCI Express Gen 4 lanes. 16 of those by default are reserved for the primary times 16 slot, so that's where you usually put your graphics card. Then you have 4 dedicated Gen 4 lanes for your primary M.2 SSD, and then you have 4 Gen 4 lanes that go to the chipset, so X570 in this situation. So that's the first slot. It's just the 4 lanes you will get from your CPU that are always dedicated on a Vrm CPU for your SSD. Then you have the 4 lanes from your chipset, so nothing spectacular there as well. Also PCI Express Gen 4 times 4. Then slot 3 and 4, they will take away lanes from your GPU. As I mentioned before, even today's high-end graphics cards, they don't really fully utilize the bandwidth of even PCI Express Gen 3 times 16, which is equal to the bandwidth that Gen 4 times 8 offers. So even having a high-end graphics card on PCI Express Gen 4 times 8 will still give you barely any difference with 16 lanes. So by taking away 8 lanes there, you can get 2 more slots on your M.2 that support PCI Express Gen 4. So that already gives you a total of 4 M.2 Gen 4 M.2 slots. Then there are a 5th and a 6th one. The 5th one will take the lanes away from those are chipset lanes from the 2nd PCI Express slot. So let's quickly go to Ruud so he can point you out which one that is.
Which one?
The bottom PCI Express slot. Yeah. So if you're using that, that one, indeed. So you will lose those lanes and you will transfer them over to the M.2 SSD. Of course, this is something you can choose. So if you don't occupy it, of course, you can use the slot. This is all up to you. And then by having the 6th M.2 SSD installed, that one will disable SATA 5 and 6. So that's on the side. I believe they're the bottom ones, the SATA ones.
This one?
The SATA. Those will be disabled when you put in the 6th M.2 Gen 4 SSD. So that way you can go up to 6 Gen 4 M.2 SSDs. So again, this is not fixed, this is fully switchable. If you want to run your PCI Express graphics card with 16 lanes. Of course, you can do that, but then you have up to 4 Gen 4 M.2 SSDs. If you are fine with having 8 lanes on your graphics card, you can do up to 6 Gen 4 SSDs. Matt is asking, does the PCI Express x16 slot from the PCH run at X8 mode when M.2 number 5 is not used? Yeah, I believe it has 8 lanes, but you cannot divide them further, so it's not that you can use it with 4.
You also had an earlier question, said, does it have M.2 redrivers? Not sure if that's necessary.
I'm not sure if that's still necessary with these. I need to double check that.
Yeah.
Because of course they use server grade PCBs, and it's also a 6-layer PCB, so the signal quality is already quite good. But maybe for the bottom ones, I don't know specifically. Of course, the further you go away, the bigger the traces will be, the longer the traces will be, and you always lose a little bit of signal quality.
It's from the PCH, right? So it's not
that
from
the PCH? No, it's not that far. So I think maybe it's not even necessary. I'm not 100% sure on that one. Can you take a look in the secondary PCI Express slot if it's hardwired to 4 lanes or 8 lanes?
Hard to see. It's an 8 slot, but doesn't mean it's wired 8.
No.
Actually, it has an extra wire, but that's because of an engineering sample.
Yeah, we always get early samples, so sometimes they look a little bit interesting.
It looks like the traces are connected up to the 8 part, yeah, not just by 4.
Okay, so it's...
Yeah, it definitely has traces to it, yeah.
I think, yeah.
Normally you also see the small MLCC capacitors. They're not shown on this board very clearly. It's not a... I'm not sure if I can show you close enough or focused enough.
There's the additional wire.
The little blue wire means that also the traces on the edge, so on the 8 part, if it would be a 4, then only this part would be used. But if I look at the PCB, there's also traces going into this area. So it's definitely using more than just a 4. So I assume it's an 8 slot, which is also capable of running at 8.
ProRo is asking, which PCI Express slot on the case side does this motherboard's top PCI Express slot occupy? I think it's like the 3rd or the 4th. I think the 3rd, I would say. I think 3rd or 4th. I'm not 100% sure, but you noticed correctly that it's relatively low. It's there are 2 M.2 slots above the graphics card slot, so the x16 slot. And that's also to give you additional space when doing extreme overclocking, for example. When, for example, doing LN2, stuff like that, you will have more space around the CPU. So the graphics card and the CPU are further apart, so it's easier to properly cool it. Okay, let's continue. Because something else that has changed when comparing our previous X570 generation to our current X570S generation is the boards that offer Wi-Fi. They used to have Wi-Fi 6, and now the X570S boards have Wi-Fi 6E, and Wi-Fi 6E adds the 6 GHz frequency band to the already existing 2.4 and 5 GHz. So higher frequencies usually give you better data throughput, but don't give you as much distance from, for example, the router you're using. So if you're relatively close to your router, by using a higher frequency, you can get higher bandwidth, so it will be faster. That's also why you, for example, see that the faster Wi-Fi standards, they use the 5 GHz frequency band, not the 2.4. So this one supports, of course, still supports 2.4 and 5 GHz, but adds the 6 GHz frequency band to that. Then in the USB department, also some upgrades. Depends on the model, but the MEG series, for example, have a Lightning USB 20G. So that's Yeah, it's also known as USB 3.2 Gen 2 times 2, which is an extremely confusing name. It means USB at 20 gigabit per second. And also all X570S motherboards from MSI have the 10 gigabit per second USB for the front Type-C header. So can you quickly grab a board and show the connector?
Yeah, sure.
So the front Type-C, so that's a regular Type-C, and then the front Type-C on the, yeah, right there. So the regular Type-C on this board will be 20 gigabit per second. The front Type-C supports up to 10 gigabit per second.
I believe officially it's called Type E for internal
for the
routing to a Type-C on the front of the case.
And that's getting more and more common with today's computer cases. You see more and more of those cases get the front Type-C.
Yeah.
Especially the higher end cases nowadays, I would say it's almost getting standard. So you will need to have this header to be able to use that. Yeah. Then let's continue to the last part, which is experience, because there are more changes also from a hardware perspective, but also from a software perspective compared to the previous generation. Another hardware thing is that the USB audio codec that is used in these boards. So previously we used HD audio to internally connect the audio codec to the motherboard. But in this situation it's a USB audio codec. That doesn't mean that you have to plug in an actual USB cable. That's all internal. USB is just the interface that is being used to connect the codec. But by using USB instead of HD audio, you have more possibilities. For example, now you can do 32-bit with 384 kilohertz, whereas with HD audio you were not able to go that high. Also on, for example, the AMD X570S MAX, you also have Audio Boost 5 HD, and apart from the USB audio codec, that one offers an additional ESS DAC for even better audio quality. When talking about the ACE, let's also take a quick look at the M.2 Expander Z Gen 4S adding card. This one will come included in the box, or you can do some peeling again.
This is a warning sign, so
yeah.
Should I leave it on?
No, you can take it off.
Oh, okay.
More peeling is always better. So this one comes included in the box with the ACE, and it will give you 2 additional M.2 slots. So the board itself already offers 4 M.2 Gen 4 slots, and by adding this card you will get a total of 6 M.2 Gen 4 slots on the ACE as well.
Yeah, and these also are
11
centimeters or 110.
Yeah, 110 millimeters indeed. So the long ones
exactly,
you can also do. And with the Unify X, unfortunately we don't have them right here, but when you, as you could see before, we still have an engineering sample with some interesting wiring and stuff on there.
Yeah.
But when you would get this board in the store, it also comes with the DIY stand set in the box, and that is of course meant for overclocking. Basically it will elevate your motherboard so you can apply proper cooling to it if you're going to overclock outside of a case. So that one comes included with the AMD X570S Unify X MAX. Depending on the model, you also get some other nice accessories. So for example, you get the stickers. With the AMD series you get AMD stickers, MPG you get MPG. They for example also include the battery stickers, so if you don't like the look of the battery, you actually have the stickers. So
I have some stickers, I don't know if it's all of them.
Well, you have MEG, MPG and MAG, so I think you have all
Looks
of them.
like it, and I have some
and
screwdrivers.
Yeah, screwdrivers.
A normal and a Phillips one, and we got a USB stick with a MSI.
So that's for the drivers. So no more CD included with certain models.
And my personal favorite, a brush.
To clean off your motherboard. Or your keyboard
with
or whatever you
two
want to
types
clean.
of brushes. Not sure why, but yeah, it's included.
If your motherboard is dirty, you won't be able to clean it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You don't want to clean it with water. And in this generation, with previous generation, of course, came with Dragon Center software. These X570S motherboards come with our new MSI Center software, which I think is a huge improvement over Dragon Center. We've really done a lot to optimize this, so next month we will have a dedicated live stream about MSI Center to tell you more about what the differences are with Dragon Center, also how, for example, in terms of resources that it occupies compared to Dragon Center. We will show you a lot of those things in that live stream. But I think MSI Center is really a big step up compared to Dragon Center. We did get a lot of complaints about Dragon Center, certain issues with it, also the resources that it occupied, so we try to address as much as possible with the MSI Center software. And of course these boards also come with our ClickBIOS 5. That's the one you know from our previous boards as well. I think in terms of BIOS functionality we're still very competitive. So I personally like ClickBIOS 5, especially when comparing it to some other BIOSes in the market. I do think we have one of the best BIOSes out there.
Yeah.
Then let's take a very close look at all of the motherboards that we have in front of us today. Let's first take a look at the models that we will have in our X570S lineup. So starting off with the Arsenal series, the MAG series, we have already shown in the previous live stream as well the MAG X570S Torpedo Max, as well as the MAG X570S Tomahawk Max Wi-Fi. Then within our MPG series, so that's our performance series, the more mid-range series, we have our MPG X570S Edge Max Wi-Fi, which is the board that is currently in front of Ruud on the test bench. That was also used in the demonstrations.
Yep.
Then we have our MPG X570S Carbon Max Wi-Fi, and there is a special version of the Carbon, which is called the MPG X570S Carbon EKX, and it's called EK for a reason, because this is in collaboration with EK water blocks, and it comes with a mono block for the CPU and the VRM. Later on I will show you in more detail. Unfortunately we don't have that board here, but I do have more information for you. And then in our MEG series, so that's our enthusiast segment, we have the MEG X570S Unify X Max. So that one specifically targeted at overclockers with 2 DIMM slots, for example, also offers 6 times M.2. And then we have our MEG X570S Ace Max, so the top model in our X570S lineup. So let's first take a look at the Torpedo. So maybe you can grab the board.
Yes, sorry, yeah, I was reading some texts. Somebody asked, is the network optimizer now optional in MSI Center? Actually, most of it is optional, because you can
pretty
select
much everything
which,
is optional. Yeah.
Yeah, you can pretty much select whatever you want in MSI Center, what you want to keep installed and what you want to have uninstalled. You can try it out, everything, and if you don't like it, you just uninstall it.
So this is the MAG X570S Torpedo Max, and this one comes with 12 60 amp power stages. So it's a really strong VRM design. You can also easily run a Ryzen 9 on this motherboard.
Yeah.
You can also overclock it, no worries at all. So 12 60 amp power stages is really strong already.
Yeah.
Extended heatsink design, fully made out of metal.
Yeah, you can see it's a
Yeah,
firm
it goes
block
all-
and
yeah.
also has some cutouts, so also extra surface area.
Yeah, stretches all the way over the ports on the I/O.
Yeah, really solid one.
Then it has both 2.5 gigabit LAN and 1 gigabit LAN, so you get dual LAN on this board. Here we can also see HDMI 2.1, so that one is also capable of doing 4K resolutions at 60 Hz. Then you have a flash BIOS button for easy BIOS flashing. You get the audio with the optical out, and of course a bunch of USB ports. Also it offers the front USB Type-C with 10 gigabits per second right there.
Is that visible?
Yeah, it is visible.
Yeah, okay.
Audio Boost 5, Lightning Gen 4 M.2 slots. It offers 2 of them, and the primary one also offers the M.2 Shield Frozzer.
Yeah.
Then let's continue with our MAG X570S Torpedo Max Wi-Fi.
Torpedo,
Or the Tomahawk Max Wi-Fi,
yeah,
sorry.
Yeah.
We
Looks
just had
almost
the
the same.
Torpedo. Now we're going to the Tomahawk. So this one also comes with 12 60 amp smart power stages. Also has the extended heatsink design. The big difference, apart from the color between the Tomahawk and the Torpedo, is in the networking department. So if we go to the I/O, you can see that there is 2.5 gigabit LAN and Intel Wi-Fi 6E instead of 2.5 gigabit LAN and 1 gigabit LAN. So both wired and wireless connectivity. Camera had a little bit of issues with focus, but it's
I just pulled it back a little bit.
And another addition to this board when comparing it to the Torpedo is that the Tomahawk also has M.2 shield frozzer on the secondary M.2 slot.
Yeah. Also the heatsink is just a little bit more
Yeah, it's
beefier.
a little bit beefier cooling.
You can feel it's a little bit more heavy, and it's not just the M.2 heatsink, it's definitely this one.
Yeah, you can also see it in the side. It's not open. It's fully closed.
Yeah, it's not open. This is not a plastic cap. It's also metal, so it's.
Action Brother is asking: is that brown, gray, or black?
It's gray.
Yeah, it's maybe. I can see that it looks kind of brownish on the camera, but I would say in real life it's more towards gray. I would say.
Yeah.
Like a gunmetal gray type of finish.
Yeah, I think gunmetal is the best description. Yeah.
Yeah. Then the next one is a little bit more difficult because that is our MPG X570S MAX Wi-Fi, and that's the one Ruud has right in front of him on his test bench. So Ruud, get out your camera.
Yeah, I hope still have a battery life left. Oh, only 1%, so be quick.
You really have 1%?
Yeah, 1%.
Okay, quickly. So also 12 power stages, but in this situation there are even 75 amp, so compared to 60 on the MAG models. Also completely aluminum extended heatsink Vrm cooling.
Very solid, yeah.
This one has 3 Lightning Gen 4 M.2 slots, and all of them have M.2 shield frozzer cooling.
Yeah,
so
one is below the graphics card.
card.
Yeah, exactly.
Also 6-layer PCB. In this situation it's a server grade PCB. On the I/O you will see both 2.5 gigabit LAN and Intel Wi-Fi 6E. It also offers HDMI 2.1, of course.
There goes the. Oh no.
And here you see that you have both a flash BIOS button and a clear CMOS button on the rear I/O.
Yeah.
And plenty of USB ports.
Yep.
Oh, it still didn't crash yet.
Not yet.
All good, all good. Then let's continue with our next board in the MPG series.
Oh, there it went. I just buzzed as it turned off.
Oh, that's timing.
Yeah.
Nigerian is asking, is that a PS2 port? Yes. In case we still have the space for PS2, we decide still to include it. It doesn't make sense to
asking why the Unify X didn't have any PS2 port anymore.
Space.
Space, okay.
Space, yeah.
Yeah.
More USB ports. If it exceeds a certain amount, we don't have the space for PS2 anymore. So if there is enough space left, we try to still put it on there. In terms of cost, it's not really significant, so it doesn't make sense to leave it out. And some people still prefer to have it. For example, also people that are still using those very cool IBM Model M keyboards and stuff like that. They still use PS2. So let's continue to our other MPG model, the MPG X570S Carbon Max Wi-Fi. Ruud is already grabbing it.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I just connected my phone to the USB port to give it a little bit of charge. Somebody's suggesting a power bank, but I didn't bring one. So
this one has an even stronger VRM design than the Edge, because this one has 14 75 amp power stages instead of 12 on the Edge.
And this is,
also
heatsink is
big heatsink
connected with the heat pipe.
Yeah, this one has the heat pipe.
Looks very nice. Yeah. Oh,
and you can do some peeling.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I just saw it. Oh, it's in two steps. Two-step peeling.
Two-step peeling, and you can do. I see you can do more peeling on the bottom of the board as well.
Yeah.
I see some blue there.
Yeah, that's on the logo. Wow.
You might be wondering, why is there a red sticker on there? If you buy this board in the store, you will not get the red sticker. It basically means that this is a dead sample. Next to the socket.
This is like a metal mesh.
Yeah, it's like a metal mesh indeed.
And then there's a shiny dragon underneath. Okay. I didn't see this before.
Yeah, it also has a very big aluminum cover over the M.2s. So on this board you have 4 Gen 4 M.2 slots. So 1 on the top, then you have 2 underneath, 1 big heatsink, and 1 underneath the bottom heatsink. So 4 in total.
Okay. 1, 2, 3 then.
No, it has, underneath the big one you have 2 slots.
Hang on.
Maybe you can see it on the back of the board.
Well, I have a screwdriver. Makes it much easier. So this is just a single one.
Matt is asking, you mean a manufacturing sample with a red sticker? Yeah, this is an engineering sample, and it's dead. It doesn't work. That's why it has a red sticker.
Oh yeah, here we go.
So you get 2 M.2 slots underneath. I see a question in chat. Nigerian on Twitch is asking, what are the white circles on the back? So if you turn it around,
Yeah.
there you can see the keep out zones.
It says avoid collision.
Yes.
Now why so big?
I'm not sure actually. I will feedback that because this is maybe a little bit too
It doesn't
prominent.
look that nice, I must say.
But yeah, the upside is this is the rear of the motherboard. You usually don't see this.
Normally no. No. I also saw that on the Unify or Ace Unify, I think. Yeah, Unify has it. And all of them, Ace, Tomahawk also, yeah, all of them have that.
Yeah.
Doesn't look that particularly stylish. I can imagine why they did it, because we do get some issues from time to time that people knock off components because they handle it improperly, I would say.
It's usually when putting it inside the case, and you have those standoffs.
Yeah.
And with the standoffs, you can indeed knock off components. If you're not careful, you can knock off components of the back of the motherboard. So that's why the warning is there.
Especially the small capacitors, the
they can
SMD
be really small
capacitors.
capacitors.
They can be damaged quite easily with standoffs. Yeah.
So always be careful when positioning your motherboard into a case. Don't just throw it in there somewhere close to the standoffs. Just really look at where the standoffs are located in your case and properly position your motherboard on top of that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the I/O, because there we have 2.5 gigabit LAN and Intel Wi-Fi 6E. You also see, more peeling.
Oh yeah, good.
You also see plenty of
What's the
USB
yellow
ports.
trace on the back of all the motherboards?
Oh, that's the yellow trace is what separates the PCB from the audio and the rest of the motherboard, so you don't get interference in your audio. So it's a separated part of the PCB. That's the trace you're seeing. So you see plenty of USB ports, 2.5 gigabit LAN and Intel Wi-Fi 6E, both clear CMOS and flash BIOS button, HDMI 2.1, and of course the USB Type C port. Also on the board itself you get the Type C header, of course, 10 gigabits per second. So yeah, that's our carbon.
And let's see. Yep, our carbon looks quite okay.
And what I also want to show you is our special edition of this board, which is the MPG X570S Carbon EKX. In terms of specification, this board is identical to the board you just saw, with one big difference, and that's of course the custom liquid cooling mono block on there from EK Water Blocks, and that will cool both the CPU and the VRM on the motherboard. Other than that, the specifications are identical to the other carbon. So if you're into custom water cooling, then this is a very nice bundle with the perfect block for this board. Also comes with a flow indicator and RGB lighting, of course. And then while Ruud is putting the carbon back together, I'm going to continue to the MEG X570S Unify X MAX, and this is of course our board for overclocking, but also for extreme storage possibilities. So this one has 2 DIMM slots, has to do with the memory signal, so you get a very clear memory signal, and you can go over 5800 megahertz on the DDR4. It has a direct 16-phase 90 amp VRM design. It has 6 Gen 4 M.2 slots, aluminum cover on the VRM cooling. It's also very big VRM cooling with the heat pipe in there as well.
Yeah, this is really massive.
It's also
huge.
a very heavy board.
Yeah.
6-layer PCB, 2-ounce thickened copper, and it's also server grade PCB on this board. It has a Lightning USB 20G Type-C on the rear I/O. So 20 gigabits per second, all peeling time.
Yeah.
A lot of USB ports, that's why you don't get the PS2 on the Unify, because there's no space, as you can see. So people were asking for more USB ports. Here you have more USB ports.
Yeah, that's a lot of them.
Is this enough, guys? Chat?
Yeah.
Is this okay?
Well, why so many USB 2?
I think it has to do with the space for the chips as well.
Oh, also because you're using so many lanes for the M.2.
Indeed.
Yeah, the fast lanes are gone.
And like for a keyboard and a mouse, you don't need fast USB. You just need
and
a
a
USB
headset
port.
and
Yeah,
all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
But you also do get plenty of fast USB ports. Of course, the 20G Type-C port, but you also get 3 10 gigabit per second ports and 4 5 gigabit per second ports. So you don't need any more USB hubs, I think, with this one. If you do, you really have issues. Then you have too many USB
Or you don't want to
devices.
put all the sticks in the
back. Yeah, okay, then it makes
because
sense.
it's under your desk
But
or whatever.
if you still need more USB ports than this, maybe get rid of some USB devices. Further on, it also has USB, 2.5 gigabit LAN.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, right there. So no Wi-Fi on this board, only wired LAN.
What's the MSRP for the Unify X?
Later on I will get into the MSRPs.
Okay.
But this one, unfortunately, is still unknown, I can already tell you.
Yeah.
Okay. This board, as some people in chat already noticed, has some extra space in between the CPU and the graphics card. That has to do with cooling. You have more space for airflow, but also more for cable management. Also, if you're going to do extreme overclocking and you need to put that LN2 pod on there, you have more space around it for isolation, etc. So your graphics card and your CPU are not as close to each other. So this motherboard is really designed with overclocking in mind, really to suit the need for extreme overclockers. And then we have our final model, the MSI X570S MAX. And that board, we already saw a little bit of it, but let's take one closer look at it.
Ace Max.
So this board also offers a direct 16-phase VRM design with 90 amp smart power stages. I see Sam is saying, where is the LED? Well, the Unify doesn't have any RGB lighting at all, but this one has. Right there, and the Dragon is also RGB illuminated. Also has very extensive VRM cooling with, of course, the heat pipe in there as well. It has 4 Gen 4 M.2 slots on the motherboard itself, but this one comes with the add-in card, the M.2 Expander Z Gen 4 add-in card, for 2 additional Gen 4 M.2 slots. So M.2 Expander Z Gen 4S add-in card.
Yeah. So you can also do 6.
Yes, you can do 6. Further on, when we're going to take a look at the I/O, we have 2.5 gigabit LAN as well as Intel Wi-Fi 6E. You also get the Lightning USB 20G USB Type-C port, both clear CMOS and the flash BIOS button, of course. So also plenty of USB here.
And it has 8 SATA.
Exactly, it has 8 SATA as well.
Yeah. So that's a lot of storage, 8 SATA plus 6.
Up to 6 Gen 4 and 2 SSDs.
Would you lose some SATAs there as well? Probably.
I don't think so. I think you will take the lanes from your graphics card slot if you use the add-in card.
Okay.
Okay, then let's take a look at the pricing. I saw a lot of people were already asking about this. I don't want to disappoint you, but I don't have all prices just yet. I can already show you the pricing for the Torpedo and the Tomahawk, They are 239 US dollar MSRP, excluding VAT, or 239 euro, including VAT. Then the Tomahawk will be 279 in both USD, excluding VAT, and euro, including VAT. And please mind, this is just MSRP. It doesn't mean that this is exactly what the board will cost in the store. That can be lower, higher, depending on your region. This is just for indication purposes, and also resellers, they can define their own pricing. So this is just the recommended price by us. Then I also have the price for the MPG X570S Carbon EKX. That one is $599, but that one of course comes with the mono block from EK wire blocks included in the box. The pricing for the Edge, the Carbon, the Unify X, and the Ace is still to be decided. It's very tricky right now because, of course, with the COVID situation, there's quite a bit of shortage in components. It's not just the PC market that struggles with this. It's also, for example, automotive, electric cars also struggle with getting sufficient components. We have the same issue, and that sometimes decides the price of certain components. So we didn't want to give you an unrealistic price of certain products. So these prices are still to be determined. I see the question, when is the release? In the coming weeks, you should already be seeing the first X570S motherboards in the store. Probably Torpedo and Tomahawk will arrive first, and later on you can also expect the other models. Depends a bit on where you are located, when they will arrive exactly. But depending on where you are, expect to see the first models pop up in the stores in the coming weeks. Then we have something else to show you, but before we do that, I think it's time to pick another winner. And Ruud, maybe you can show what this person will win.
Okay, we have the B550 Tomahawk, and we have the 5600G Ryzen 5, if I'm correct.
If you want to win this bundle, go to msi.com/2/insider.
Actually, I should show it like this because...
So this is one of the latest APUs from AMD. It's a Ryzen 5, so 6 cores, 12 threads, but it also comes with integrated graphics. And let me draw a winner in the meanwhile. Ooh, we have a lot of entries. So we will now pick, we already picked our first winner, we will now pick our second winner, and at the end of the stream we will have our third winner as well. Our system is having a lot of issue with all the entries.
Then I'm gonna put this down.
Yeah, it's getting heavy.
Yeah, the box not so much because it's empty, but the motherboard is quite heavy here.
So our first winner was Shikes. I don't know if I pronounced it correctly. If I don't, I'm sorry about that. Come on, system. You guys are overloading our system. My system is stuck, guys. I think I have to take these prizes home.
I can do that too.
I don't think we can get another winner because my system is refusing it. I don't think chat will agree. Hello, system. Yes, we do have our next winner. Ruud, can you read it?
I think it's nicknamed Tijn.
Tijn, congratulations, you also won a set consisting of the Ryzen 5 5600G with an MAG B550 Tomahawk motherboard. Congratulations, you're the second winner for today. we will have one final giveaway for one more of these bundles. So if you haven't participated yet, go to msi.com/2/insider or follow the direct link that Twitch and YouTube will have in the chat every 5 minutes. Time, congratulations. For the winners, you will get an email from us in the coming days, and we'll ask you, of course, for your shipment information. And then we will make sure to ship the prices to you as soon as possible. So let's continue with our next topic, because we've got something more to show, and those are our new liquid coolers. We have our new MAG CORELIQUID P Series liquid coolers, and you've got one right there.
I've got one.
So in this image you see the P360, and Ruud has got the P280 there.
The 280 has some big fans, of course.
Yes. But this is not the only model that we will talk about today, because we also have our MAG CORELIQUID C Series, and that's the one you've been using on your test bench all the time.
That's correct, yeah.
So is your battery already alive again?
Yeah, I was starting my phone and it's 8% now, so that should hold it for a couple of minutes. I'm still same IP, so that's good. No, sorry, it's the wrong Wi-Fi.
Okay.
It's
you had to
reverting
restart
back
your
to
phone?
the wrong one. Okay. Come on.
You certainly don't have 5950X in your phone.
Okay. Yes.
Yes, we're up
You
and
can
running.
try, yeah.
I'm still stuck. Wait, maybe I need to reconnect to your...
Yeah, reconnect probably. How many minutes we still need? Because nature is calling.
Oh, not much.
Ah, okay.
I think like, can you hold on for 15 minutes?
15 would be too much.
Okay,
So
then we'll go quickly through it.
yeah, okay.
So our MAG CORELIQUID C Series, and this is the C360 you're seeing here, so with 3 fans.
Yeah.
And
I'm
this
trying to
one-
capture the LED colors, but it's this looks okay.
So as you can see, the main difference between the P and the C Series is that the C Series has a lot of this is a lot better at this angle.
Yeah.
It has RGB lighting, and the P Series, the P stands for pure, so that one is without RGB. Other than that, these two liquid cooler series are identical. So in terms of cooling performance, in terms of other features, the C and the P series are the same.
The fans on the P do seem to have RGB, so
I'm not sure if they included the right fans now.
yeah, maybe they've included the wrong ones, that's possible. But the fans in the box are definitely with RGB, addressable RGB.
Well, the fans with the P series shouldn't have RGB. Just so
Okay, so this is the block, sorry. I'll put the phone down for a second. So the radiator is of course a little bit bigger because, or at least wider, because it's a 280.
Grigmo is asking what's the difference with the K360. We'll go through all the features. These are MAG series, so Arsenal series liquid coolers. So they're positioned a little bit lower than the K series. So for example, the K series also has an LCD screen on there and stuff.
And this is the
That's stuff you
CPU
don't
block.
get with these models. So here you see the fully black block,
Yeah.
and in the background you can see the block on the C series, which is completely illuminated.
That's this one.
So if we take a look at them side by side, this is what it will look like with the P series on the left and the C series on the right. So addressable RGB on the C series. These will come in 3 different sizes each. So you get a 240mm model, so the P240 and the C240. Then you have the P280 and the C280. You actually have a 280mm model there.
Yep.
So let me see. Here you can see that's a relatively large radiator. So it's it's a little bit shorter than the 360 that you see on the left, but it is a little bit higher. Maybe you can have them side by side.
Yeah.
So the 280 model, of course, comes with two 140mm fans, whereas the 240 and the 360 come with 120mm fans.
I don't know if you can see it in the main camera. So
it's a bit shorter, but a bit wider.
Yeah. So I think that sums it up. You can also see by the fans a little bit bigger.
Yeah. So 140mm fans.
Yeah. I really need to go.
Okay. I will continue.
Okay. Okay. I'll put my microphone out there, off.
Chris is asking Asetek, right? No, these are not made by Asetek. The K series are made by Asetek. And we also have an upcoming series together with Asetek. So if you're looking for an Asetek water cooler, stay tuned because we will have more of that. Something all these models already come with is LGA 1700 compatibility. I cannot tell you too much about LGA 1700 yet, but I think you all know what I'm talking about, and I want to say that all these P and C series coolers already have the right bracket included for this upcoming socket. So other than that, I'm not going to tell you anything else. In the future, of course, we will have a dedicated live stream where we will tell you all about this, but right now I cannot say anything more than this, but it comes with LGA 1700 compatibility. Then let's take a look at how the radiator works on this C and P series, because it has a specific flow, and that's for a very specific reason. The hot liquid will come in from the sides, and it will of course cool down, and the cold liquid will flow through the center out of the radiator again. And the reason that the hot liquid is flowing through the outside of the radiator is that's where we will get the airflow from the fans. So the center of the fan will never give you airflow. So if you just run any random case fan, you can just try to feel it as well. In the center, of course, you have the motor, and that one will of course block the airflow. It's the wings around it that will create airflow. So Ruud is back, so we can do some demonstrations. So Ruud, can you maybe put the fan on top of the radiator?
The fan on top of the radiator,
yes,
like this?
In front, yeah. No, in front, where you would position it.
Yep.
So the airflow won't be in the middle. It will be around the center of the fan. So by having the hot liquid flow through the outside parts of the radiator, it will cool the liquid when it's hot, and it will flow back when it's cold again in the part where a fan doesn't have as much airflow.
Yeah.
This is also where you can see the pump positioning. It will be right underneath the motor of the fan. So it will not really take away any radiator size basically where it really matters. So the airflow will be around that point, and that's where you want to have the radiator surface area. So that's why the pump is located exactly in that position.
It's an airflow dead zone anyway. So
yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
The pump in here it's a special pump. It's a 3-phase motor to make sure you don't get any vibrations, and it's also very durable. Of course, you don't want vibrations because vibrations will also bring noise. That's sometimes the humming that you can hear when you start on certain computers. Those are usually vibrations. Can also come from case fans. That's why you often see that they have like the rubberized corners with fans. That's also to diminish any unwanted vibrations there. So a very silent and durable motor in there. Then let's take a look at the radiator pump design. Here you see an exploded view of what's inside that radiator. So this is it's almost a square that you see inside the radiator with the 4 screws there. And then let's go back to the exploded view. The pump is located underneath. So it's not inside the water block on the CPU, what you will, for example, see with the K series. But for this model, it's integrated into the radiator. Then we have our tubing. So let's maybe show this up close, because this has special evaporation-proof tubing, and it's fully sleeved. And this will, for example, help a lot when you, in certain situations, you don't have the ideal space for your tubes, so to say, and sometimes they get in a little bit uncomfortable circumstances. Also, for example, with sharp heat sinks, stuff like that. So to make sure you don't get any cuts in your tubing, there is a protective layer over the tubing as well. Also, the tubing is quite strong, so you can bend it quite a lot without damaging the tubing. So you still have the proper flow of the liquid inside. And then, of course, extensive compatibility. We already talked about the support for LGA 1700, and I know you guys want to know more about this, but I'm not going to tell you just yet, but I will do it later on. But of course, you also have support for all current generation sockets from Intel, so 1200, but also the older 1150, so 1150, 1151, 55, 56. But also high-end desktop platform, 1366, 2011, the different versions, 2066. And on AMD, you also, of course, get AM4 support, also a lot of older AMD sockets, and an important one, the socket TR4 support, so for the TRX40 motherboards. That one only comes with the 360mm models, and that of course has to do with the core count on these CPUs. They need a lot of cooling capacity from a cooler, so that's why only the models with most cooling capacity, so in this situation the P360 and the C360, they will come with support for Threadripper CPUs, so socket TR4. G340 is asking, will these work with something I haven't heard about, and a socket I haven't heard about, so cannot comment anything about that yet. Insomniac is asking, is this board RGB? These are liquid coolers, the C series are RGB. If you're talking about the board right here, the MAG D550 Tomahawk, that's the one you can win today, so make sure to go to msi.com/2/insider, last chance to enter, because in a couple of minutes we will have our last winner. But yes, that board has Mystic Light RGB. Yeah,
and it just uses the addressable RGB header, so you don't need to use USB or whatever. No. It's just pluggable on any motherboard or RGB hub.
Yeah, indeed.
So
you can also just control it through the software that you use for your motherboard.
Yeah, for MSI you can use it through Mystic Light.
Yes. And then let's, last but not least, go to the pricing. Here we do have the full pricing of all models that we just talked about. So the MAG CoreLiquid P series, they don't have RGB lighting, so they're obviously a little bit cheaper, starting at $99 US excluding VAT, or 99 euros including VAT for the 240mm model. Then we have the 280mm model, so P280, $199 or $119 dollars excluding VAT, euros including VAT, and the P360 at $139. Then for the C series, it starts at $129 for the C240, to $149 for the C280, and $159 for the C360. So, just to remind you, the 360mm models also come with the Threadripper support. The other models come with support for the Intel high-end desktop platform and all the mainstream platforms, AM4, LGA 1200, LGA 1700, but only the 360mm models come with Threadripper support. So that was it for today for all the content. But we still have one more set to give away. So can you quickly tease it again, what we're giving away?
Yeah, of course.
So the winner the last winner for today, because we already gave away 2 of these bundles, will get a Ryzen 5 5600G with an MAG B550 Tomahawk motherboard. And here I have our last winner for today. Ruud, it's up to you.
The cursor is in the way,
Oh,
but
I will move it.
Yeah. Nickname is Tapso.
Tapso. I have no idea how to pronounce it, but
No,
congratulations.
pronounce
You
it
also won a Ryzen 5 5600G APU, the latest Cezanne series from AMD, together with a nice matching MAG B550 Tomahawk motherboard. Congratulations to all winners. Please keep an eye on your mailbox. I will send you an email in the coming days and will ask you for your shipping information. The faster you manage to provide your shipping information, the faster we're able to ship the prices to you. And of course, we hope you will enjoy them. If you didn't win this time, I'm sorry about it, but of course, next week we will have another giveaway. I'm not sure what we'll have as a giveaway, but of course we will have another giveaway. And in the future, we will of course sometime do more hardware giveaways. So make sure to tune in every Wednesday, same place, same time. And next week, Ja will talk about our new MAG Infinite S3 gaming desktop, which is perfectly suitable for 1440p gaming. So make sure to join next week. Again, congratulations to the winners. We will get the prizes to you as soon as possible. For the rest, thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. Ruud, thank you for joining again.
Yeah,
and
thank
for
you
all
for
the
having
technical
me.
backgrounds. And well, hope to see you all again next week.
See you
Goodbye.
next week. Bye-bye.